Okay.
The council meeting being held on Tuesday, 24th of January 2023. I'd like to start with the acknowledgement of the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the land. City of Prospect acknowledges that we are on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. I'd now like to read the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Okay, item 2 on the agenda, with no one on leave. Item 3 on the agenda, Councillor Tweed Wynn, it's an apology. Item 4 on the agenda, declaration by members of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest? Councillor Groot.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Conflict of interest, I'd like to record for item 10.1, the SA Public Health Council as our intention to nominate.
Anything else? Any other declarations? Okay, item 5 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes, recommendation on page 2. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stanton, would you like to speak?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak?
No, thanks.
No need to sum up. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item number 6 on the agenda, public question time. So public question time, there's a maximum period of 15 minutes in total allowed, a maximum time of 3 minutes per person, and the presiding member may allow for extensions of time if appropriate. Are there any questions from the public? Should have bought a ticket machine. Do we ask them to come forward?
Yes. There's code of conduct that they need to.
Sorry?
The rules are there. Right.
So can you say what happens next?
You get to select who goes first.
Okay, saw it first hand up over here. Would you like to come up? Do we have to state the name and
address.
name and address for the purposes of minutes, please?
Thank you, elected members. My name is Anna Graves. My address is PO Box 2059 Prospect. Question to the elected members is this. I hope that you may have heard me on the radio this morning and yesterday on ABC 891 discussing the outcome of the CAP hearing and the implications for Rosary Hall. In the CAP, we were unable to address the demolition of the hall, notwithstanding the fact that the demolition is inextricably linked to the development approval granted to Rosary School last night. At present, there is no requirement for approval of demolition as part of the development application. So we can come home from work and find the house, come home from work and find the house next door has been reduced to rubble. Further, no applications for local heritage listing can be heard by the council. In light of this vacuum in our city, for those who wish to protect our heritage, what is the City of Prospect doing to address this?
Yeah.
So through you, Mayor, look, the City of Prospect's been heavily involved in advocating for improvements to and strengthening of local heritage rules for years. Details of this can be found in a range of motions going back some years in terms of advocacy, in particular to the former Liberal government, but more recently to Minister, who's the new Minister, Champion, in relation to, in particular, strengthening of local heritage provisions to make local heritage listing easier and to lower the bar for applications for local heritage significance. The challenge we have here, of course, is that we can advocate and we have soft power. That's the limit of our capacity right now under the existing legislation. The Development Act doesn't really give us a great deal of scope to do much more than advocacy, which the city of Prospect has been doing quite vociferously for a number of years. Director Pearce, do you have anything to add to that?
Only through the mayor that we are putting together a submission to the minister, as well as a letter to both the state ministers and federal ministers on this very issue, to again draw focus on character areas, the significance of character areas in Prospect, to draw attention to the very fact that's being raised tonight, and to highlight that we want our seeking further support in our advocacy in this space.
I think I'll just conclude by saying that the Eastern Region Alliance of Councils, which includes not only Prospect, but Walkerville, Norwood, Payneham, St Peters, Campbelltown, Burnside and Hunley, are also involved in collective advocacy to the minister on this issue, because it's an issue not only for Prospect, of course, but for a range of other councils, and those inner metro councils in particular are all struggling with the question of heritage overlays, local heritage listings, and we feel that together we've got more of an opportunity to potentially make an impact. Minister Champion recently has been making certain statements that would suggest that the current government are more open to having this conversation, but there's no clear evidence of imminent change, if I can put it that way, which I know won't please you or many people in the gallery. But from the City of Prospect standpoint, look, there's no one in this chamber right now, staff or elected members, who feels that the current heritage provisions, as far as I know anyway, who feels that the current heritage provisions are appropriate. It's fair to say I'm not sure there's much more we can do within the realms of advocacy to move the dial any faster.
I would like your support in terms of our move, which will be amping up quite significantly to save Rosary Hall from the wrecking ball, as my deputation last year indicated. There is nothing to stop that hall, which is 100 years and 104 years of age. It's sat quietly in Staples Court. It has been the centre of Catholic education in this city until 1930. Sorry, it was a church until 1937. And has continued to be the centre of Catholic education for primary school children in this city for 104 years. I have the support of Friends of Rosary Hall here this evening, and I will be continuing my dialogue with media in terms of making sure that this issue is front and centre in terms of heritage advocacy in the city.
Thank
So
you.
I'd ask for your support.
Thank you.
you.
Do we have any further questions from the public? Lizzie, would you like to approach the? Okay, could you please state your name and address?
Cassie Street, Collinswood.
The clock's on,
I've
3 minutes.
just got a question of process. It looks like you're going to discuss the Broadview Oval tree removal petition before you allow the chair of the Prospect Local Environment Group to speak to the petition. Why is that?
We're actually going to,
Sense.
so we're going to ask for a suspension of standing orders to delay the decision in the motion to allow the deputy to speak before we vote on the motion.
Okay, thank you.
No
Thank you
worries.
for that clarification. It just looked like that wasn't going to
No
happen.
problems yet.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
worries.
thank you. Further question at the back there, please. And then you can go next. Sorry.
Okay, Jenny Russell, 66 Allen Street, second part. My question is regards to the Rosary development. As a retired teacher of Prospect Primary School for 10 years, I had first-hand experience of the chaos, the daily chaos of traffic around both Prospect Primary School and Rosary School. I noted that in the report, the application, there was very little mention of the increase of numbers of Prospect Primary School that focused on Rosary School, and there wasn't very much about the impact of traffic, the extra traffic with extra staff, extra students at Prospect. No amount of education of parents will actually alleviate the traffic issues. That's an experience that I've had. Families will always have their own rules that they wish to obey. I'm concerned about the authority that teachers will have who are on duty or children crossing monitors have to stop traffic turning right from Gladstone Road into Rosary School, or there'll still be some, even though they've got this wonderful kiss and drop plan, there will still be some parents who will come down Staples Court and do a U-turn to go back out. So my question is, in the council's traffic management plan, how often, when, and even will the council monitor the traffic around the neighbourhood to ensure that the Rosary School keeps to the plans outlined in their development? For example, the staff will be parking at Rosary Church. There's no right turn into Gladstone Road, from Gladstone Road. There will be no additional traffic in Staples Court, even though I'm sure there will be. And in regards to the traffic, has the council actually done an assessment about
1 minute to go.
traffic, about emergency vehicles being able to have access into the school, into the resident's home? It may be an infrequent event, but with cars all lined up in the Kiss and Drop and Staples Court, it will be impossible for a fire truck to get down that road, impacting on the safety of children and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we had a question there in the second row.
You don't want to answer my
Oh,
question?
sorry, yeah.
I was waiting.
You didn't finish on a questioning sort of tone, but you asked the question a little while back, yeah.
Question mark.
Right, thank you.
So through email, it would take me 2 or 3 hours to provide you with a comprehensive response on that. Mr. Rossiter, what I can say is, I love the question, and council understands the challenge. Part of the, I guess, the challenge we have in terms of managing these CAP decisions is, again, our capacity to influence is limited, as Councillor Nelson can attest to from last night. Having said that, the outcome is what it is, and I guess from our standpoint, what you're asking us is how we will manage it as a council. And within our current resourcing, again, I'm sure there are people in here who understand the diligence with which we manage, do our best to manage traffic compliance around school zones. We can't do it every day and we can't do it at every school. We only have 2 compliance officers. They do a difficult job and they do their level best. We do apply the education before expiation approach. So again, we do try not to just hit people with a stick all the time, but try to change behaviours. We work with schools to come up with combined approaches to traffic management that are communicated both by the schools and by us, hopefully in a consistent manner. We do our best to enforce traffic around schools and parking issues around schools, not only during drop-off and pick-up hours, but also out of hours. But of course, again, the City of Prospect has more than one zone of parking challenge at one time. So it's not, we can't apply a blanket approach always, and we can't be everywhere all the time. Increases in, or potential increases in volume will be an issue that we'll have to take on board. And like anything, if we reach a point where, from a resourcing standpoint, we need additional staff to manage more ongoing challenging traffic problems, we'll consider that. But again, we need to really see where this goes and how it lands. You asked an additional question around emergency access. The question of emergency access is not limited, obviously, to Staples Court during school hours or other times. We have a range of narrow streets around the City of Prospect, and there's currently a body of work which will probably take some time to deliver an integrated transport plan for the entire City of Prospect. We have a dedicated traffic engineer that we hired around 6 months ago, who's gotten that work underway and started work on a number of projects, some of which members are aware of, for example, around King Street and the Sikh Temple, where we've had some traffic challenges. And there's areas certainly around Prospect where the roads are narrow and where parking on both sides of the street in particular can create issues with the conveyance of emergency vehicles. The traffic engineer, as part of the ITP program, is looking at a range of those narrow streets, whether they meet Australian standards, whether we need to move, for example, to parking on one side of the road or the other, or possibly even in extreme circumstances, look at one-way changes. But that is a significant body of work that requires careful planning, a lot of consultation before we implement, and there's a long way to go. We certainly don't want to just make these changes in a knee-jerk way, because sometimes the cure can be worse than the problem. So that work is underway, and you will see that work progress through council, and your elected members certainly are very interested in progressing that quickly, in particular one next to me, but others as well. And our goal is to have that integrated transport plan in draft form and being consulted by the end of the year. That's a stretch goal, but that's what we're looking to. So again, how we can roll in the changes, potential changes at Rosary to that remains to be seen. Again, we're trying to plan, but also see the change, and there's likely to be, if indeed the Rosary redevelopment does proceed, that change may not occur for some time. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I hope that you get on quickly to your traffic management plan. Last night, we could hardly hear.
Sorry, we're out of time, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, I just
So we
wanted
do
to
have
say
more
that we
questions.
couldn't actually hear, but I do believe that some of the development was to do.
Sorry, we're out of time.
traffic.
Sorry, we're out of time. We've got time for one more question, because we only have 15 minutes max, so let's this is the last question, because we have only got 15 minutes in total.
To sit down, sorry. that I beg your
Yeah, that's fine, no worries.
Barbara Scott.
There is huge public and authority interaction over the South Australian Planning Review, with silence on legislation that affects residents' daily lives. People move out of their homes after their peaceful enjoyment of daily life is shattered by actions and behaviour of noisy neighbours. Every facet of lifestyle is impacted: your health, economic, social, as legislation is inadequate. Move out, but somebody else moves into the same situation. The flaws in the Local Litter and Nuisance Control Act are only exceeded by the lack of review process and the misinformation that's out there. Who's responsible for what? The buck passing, and the what should be included is not included, or if it is included, it's totally ineffective and not monitored and not enforced. So after February the 9th, when submissions to the EPA close, it's too late. And I understand that all councils are putting in submissions to the EPA. However, if they don't mention these key pertinent points, then it's not considered by the EPA. The EPA only take notice of the number of submissions, the topics, and who's basically put them forward. So individual people putting through submissions doesn't hold as much water as what a council. So basically, I've got a long list, but I'm spare you that list tonight. All I wanted to say was, councillors, are you aware that banging on a drum intermittently 24/7 is okay? That's excluded. Screaming young voices late at night, yelling over the top of Siri, play XX, is excluded. While ball playing. But if you've got a dog and it barks, you can be fined $315. Your dog is only responding to the noise that it's hearing.
So you've got 1 more minute.
The ambient temperatures raised excessively from the noisy banging air conditioner next to bedroom windows and the heat generation, that's not included. The noise from the air conditioner is, but not the heat, which can also affect. Placement of air conditioners, as you know, is not required under legislation. And frosted glass you're required to have for privacy, but your neighbours can have security cameras, audio and visual 24/7 focused on your property. That's not a nuisance. EPA don't plan on making a nuisance. Police have got no jurisdiction. So how can a single elderly resident get validation for these disruptive after hours when an authorised officer has to be present for an opinion? Don't expect the police to be the catch-all. It doesn't happen.
That's the end of your time, sorry.
Key question is the statistics are out there and they're wrong because you're not getting the feedback from the residents after hours.
Sorry,
That's it.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we've used up our allotted 15 minutes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the majority of it's taken as a comment. I will just remind members that Mr. Pearce has reached out to members asking that if they have any input into the submission we plan to make as a council, that we are happy to add that to the submission that staff are pulling together, which will address a range of issues, including those raised by the questioner tonight, which I believe have been sent through by Councillor De Backer. So we have that.
Councillor Barnett.
We're more than happy, sorry, Councillor Barnett, we're more than happy to take other points on board too.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to the end of public question time.
No, we're out of time.
No, we're out of time, sorry.
Clarification on the floor.
Sorry, we're out of,
You can extend the time.
yeah, I'm choosing
You
not to.
have the position and the power to extend the time. You have people here from the community who wish to have their voices heard, who were elected by the community. You have a duty of care to accept an extension of time. Put it to the council members, please.
The presiding member may allow for extensions of time if appropriate, and I'm deciding not to.
Excuse me, that's an appalling decision. It's an appalling decision. Shame on you.
All right, I'll allow two more questions, but that's it. We've got to move on after that. So we've got one there. Well, you're, sorry, no, I'm not sure of your name, but you've had your hand up first, so I'd like to ask you to come forward first of all.
My name is Denise Shimon. I'm a cultural heritage consultant of Shimon and Associates, 8 George Street, Stepney. I have a long association with this council through my grandparents and my mother and my great grandparents. The question I would like to ask is about the makeup of your CAP panel and the meeting last night, and whether any member of your CAP panel declared a conflict of interest based on race, religion, or other culturally significant factors. Given that the Rosary Hall has got a very complex history. Now that complex history crosses religion in many different forms. And I believe that maybe one of your CAP panel members was or made his views actually known with respect to that building. So my question to you is vetting CAP panel members so they represent a broad range of people from the community with respect to Rosary Hall. I think it's a flawed decision, given that I think there is a religious question that has not been addressed about the significant history of that hall and its role in South Australian history with respect to Catholicism and the issue of conscription, something that was not raised, unfortunately, and I'm not quite sure about the due diligence. So I would like to ask about the procedures of appointments to your CAP panel and whether all those CAP members were suitable to be making a decision on that issue last night. Thank you.
So can I ask you to briefly respond?
Sure. Firstly, I will say that there's actually a report on tonight's agenda dealing with the appointment of CAP members going forward, and I'd encourage you to read it. It sets out the appointment of a panel who will then appoint CAP members in accordance with a process that would appoint on performance. And in essence, given that the majority of those panel members are your elected representatives, it's open to you, of course, to call upon any person, elected member, who will be a part of that process to select the CAP members, and you can give them your views in terms of who you feel would be from how to put this, qualification standpoint would be best suited. Now, there are, I will say, some requirements to standing for a CAP, which Mr. Pearce, you might be able to address in more detail.
Yeah, I mean, there's through the mayor, there's a series of qualifications. You need to be an accredited professional to become one of the independent members. Obviously, one of our members of CAP is a councillor, Councillor Nelson, who was there last night. The process that will go underway is, in summary, it's in the next part of the agenda tonight, but in summary, it's the members serve 2 years and on a rotating basis two of the members come up, or their membership expires this March. And a deputy independent member, their membership also expires this March. So we go through a recruitment process and an expression of interest process. It is open, it is advertised, and then we have a selection panel that is to be voted on later tonight. That comes from among the elected members here to decide from a very wide pool of nominated and accredited professionals who should go on that panel. And so I would just say one point about last night, and the decision around the development is guided by a development assessment process that is under the Planning and Design Code of Australia. And that code does not deal with the demolition principles of Rosary Hall. We have to say that again, because that is not considered as part of the code, even though we as a council are advocating the importance of character areas and historic areas as we speak, that would do affect this process. So there is a process that we go through. Those independent members, they are simply using the Planning and Design Code 2016 as the criteria for assessing the appropriateness of the development which took place last night.
I'd like to respond there that.
Sorry,
Yeah,
the question
that's,
you've just
sorry, no,
raised is
sorry, I'm not,
vitally important.
sorry, I'm not gonna allow that.
Duty of care to consider
sorry.
those people who are on your CAP panel and their vested interests. Thank you.
Can I just make one final statement, Mr. Mayor? And this applies to anyone asking a question. Part of the requirements for asking a question are that you respect the rules of council, which is not to make assertions of misconduct in the public forum. Now, I know names weren't mentioned, but in this case, any suggestion of misconduct from a CAP member is something that's dealt with in any event by the Department of Planning. CAP panels are under their jurisdiction and under their code of conduct, not ours. So even if the member happens to be an independent or an elected member, any member of CAP, the code of conduct that's administered by the Department of Planning is the relevant one. And so I understand that people may have concerns from time to time over the conduct of CAP members, but that is something to take up with the department, and council cannot manage those processes. I'm sorry.
David, you're going to be quick and to the point, right?
No.
I thought it was David.
I wanted to come down here. Sorry. I'm David Corner and healed my ears tonight. Sorry. Most of you know me as being a possible local district, but I'm also a member of Council's Disability Access and Inclusion committee. The reason being I have quite serious hearing issues. And so I've raised those issues in that committee, and I know there's some action being taken on those issues. I pointed out the high number of people in the city of Prospect with hearing loss. It's something like, I think it's 1 in 2 over the age of 60, which is quite a stunning figure. Last night I attended the CAP meeting here in this room, and I knew that I'd have trouble hearing, but I was surprised by the number of people who spoke to me after that meeting and told me they couldn't hear properly. And these people, you know, I asked them, do you have normal hearing for your age? Yes. Then why did you have problems hearing? The reason is the acoustics are terrible. And also the other problem is obviously because speakers are often sitting with their backs to the audience.
Absolutely.
There is a hearing loop in this room, which we have used during the Disability Committee, and that's a great help to me anyway. Access to this, to the equipment needed is via the front desk, which closes at 5 o'clock. So unless you make other arrangements, you're going to miss out. I'm not sure if that system also acts as a general PA system. So my question is, why is there not a decent public address system in this room? How can you expect community participation and meaningful consultation if people with normal hearing are struggling. In my experience, people are very reluctant to admit that they have a hearing loss. They become very embarrassed. And it's only afterwards, in private conversations we hear about it. I'm surprised at the sort of people I never guessed had a hearing problem. They were admitted to me in private, they won't do it in public. So I'm asking, why not do something about this and make it more effective for the gallery in particular? Maybe there's some members here who appreciate it. So he'll repeat your answer if I can't hear it.
Leo, can I ask you to provide a brief response?
Sure, through you, Mayor Larwood. Members, certainly returning members will be aware that this has been an issue that's come before council in the past. The reason why, certainly returning elected members will be aware that this is an issue that's come before council in the past. It's definitely an issue we're aware of. It's been discussed in the Access and Inclusion Committee. My understanding is that it's been a budget issue in the past. The cost of installing the equipment in this space, given that it is a multi-use space and we can't wire things permanently in place, is quite significant in the realm of $50,000 to $70,000 to do it properly. And that has been a constraint in the past for council. Not to say that it will always be a constraint, but that's been the constraint in the past. It's obviously open to members to reconsider that. And look, we know it's a problem. It's less than ideal, not just for people who are hearing impaired, but as you rightly mentioned, for the broader people too in the chamber, unless you're projecting, and I'm not sure if Cheryl can hear me at the back, but not everybody can hear. So we know that's an issue, and I know it's not a great answer. Money's never a fabulous answer to these things. But it's also not an insurmountable challenge. If we can find the money at some point in time, we might be able to address that issue.
Thank you, CEO. Thanks for the question, and thanks everybody for the questions. There'll be no further questions. Item 7 on the agenda, petitions 7.1 Broadview Oval tree removal, and as discussed previously, we're looking for a suspension of standing orders to delay the decision to allow the deputation at item 8.4 to speak. So I need 2/3 in favour of. Could I have a show of hands? She's got a calculator. I think that's unanimous. I think it's more than 2/3. Okay, so let's move to item 8.4 on the agenda, the deputation from the Prospect Local Environment Group Incorporated. Could I please ask Grace Fitzpatrick to approach the table? So for the purposes of the minutes, the name and address.
Okay, Grace Fitzpatrick, 28 New Bond Street, Nailsworth, and I'm going to put on my drama training here and project my voice.
I'm starting the clock now.
You can start the clock, but I'll start too. Thank
5
you.
minutes. And I'll give you a warning when there's 1 minute to go in case you
I
want to.
would really appreciate that. Thank you very
My
much.
pleasure.
Okay, I've already introduced myself. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight on behalf of the residents who reside near Broadview Oval and on behalf of other concerned residents in our cities. As detailed in the petition provided to council as principal signatory, I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the 8 mature trees. I'm doing my lyrics impersonation. Approved for removal as part of the Broadview Football Club redevelopment. Regardless of the age of the peppercorn trees, the residents surrounding Broadview Oval have clearly articulated their wishes for the trees to remain and for football club redevelopment to either occur on the original site or on a site where less trees need to be removed. Prospect is currently losing open green space because of years of infill residential redevelopment. Residents living near the development in Broadview have expressed their concerns and dissatisfaction regarding the loss of green space, including the removal of trees in their area because of recent infill development. Removing these trees will have a significant impact on biodiversity at the Oval. Removing these trees means removing the habitat currently used by birds and native animals. We believe council should have more respect for mature healthy trees regardless of whether they are regulated trees or not. And certainly hearing recently CAP members refer to them as weeds, I didn't think was particularly respectful. While we understand council's intent to plant 14 mature trees, from an environmental perspective, Conservation SA reported that for the first 10 years of a newly planted tree, it emits more carbon dioxide than oxygen. The planting of new trees, regardless of their maturity, cannot provide the same level of shade, shelter for humans, birds, native animals, and that currently the existing pepper trees provide. One of the issues that I've been asked to raise is a consultation process. Residents have been extremely concerned about the consultation process, and in particular, the lack of wider engagement with residents and prospect regarding both the financial impact of this redevelopment, increases already in rates, and the impact of future reductions in essential council services. Residents have been concerned about the lack of effective collaboration between the existing sporting clubs regarding the redevelopment. We believe this has contributed to the current financial situation and the imminent removal of the 8 trees. Residents are concerned that a precedent has been set that sporting clubs in the city of Prospect will be able to cut down trees as part of future redevelopments. We've been made aware of the potential for Broadview Tennis Club's future intention to remove trees as part of their redevelopment plans. Communication concerns. Residents who are invited to participate on the community reference group have expressed their concern and dissatisfaction with the lack of clear communication by council, confusion over what was captured in official minutes, not being reflected in promotional messaging being communicated regarding the redevelopment in the Community Prospect Council magazine.
1 minute.
Thank
Go,
you.
Grace.
I'll speed it up. In particular, we refer to a message that was communication message, retaining all significant trees, rather than whilst we are removing 8 very mature trees, we're planning to retain the others, would have been a more truthful statement. Residents have expressed their concerns that the majority of residents in the city still remain unaware that the trees are planned to be removed, that the new complex that is being built has not been fully costed. The project costed at 70%. The redevelopment has had a significantly increase on the budget. Redevelopment already has resulted in an increase in rates during a financially challenging time for our community and for the economy. And regarding the redevelopment being promoted to residents in our city as a community facility that local clubs and groups can utilise when the football club will be controlling usage and not council.
Thank you, Grace.
So I'm happy to finish very quickly to say, what do we want? What do we expect? A little bit more respect, a little bit more meaningful and genuine consultation. And I'm going to just finish on that note.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Grace. Let's now go back to item 7.1 on the agenda. Broadview Oval tree removal, the recommendation on page 5. Do I have a mover?
To accept petition.
Well, there's 3 parts to it. We're receiving and noting the report, determining what, if any, action should be taken in response to the petition, and inform the lead petitioner of the resolutions above. So that's what we're looking for a mover for. Councillor Deputy McGreed,
I'm happy to move to get on the table.
now would you like to speak briefly to the recommendation?
I'm happy to reserve my right in summing up.
What do you mean with the point 2?
Well, it's a very good question.
So you just moving points 1 and 3.
Yes, sorry, just for clarity, I'm happy to move points 1 and 3. I presume the council members might have a view about what to do in item 2. Because you can't move item 2 in its.
Okay, So just confirming that council agreed is moving items 1 and 3 at this point in time, not item 2. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Would you like to speak to the motion, the recommendation?
No.
Okay. Do I have any further speakers on the recommendation? Councillor Backer.
Yeah, just briefly, I did raise a question through the portal, maybe through you, Chair, in regards to, it was a CAP decision. The appropriateness is myself and Councillor Nelson commenting on it. I haven't received a response.
So through email, I haven't seen the question, Mr. Pearce. Have you seen it? As it doesn't appear to have made its way through. Look, ordinarily, these are CAP matters, and there is obviously a challenge with sitting CAP members who were involved in the decision-making process to remain in the chamber for these discussions, assuming there is some suggestion to discuss the merits of the decision of CAP, which I'm not sure is reflected in the current motion. But again, members, you know,
I just wanted to clarify that. I mean, you know, I'm certainly, you know, open to, if there's some trees that can be retained, fantastic, but from all accounts indicated, it seems that we can't retain them and construct the new building where indicated. But look, if information was other to that, I'm sure, you know, the council would welcome that. But again, if that's done in a timely manner, because obviously we're going ahead with construction. So, like, not only like this, and I thank you for the petition and the deputation, because it's not only just the trees proper, it's actually the root zones.
Yeah.
So though you might be able to retain the tree, like we're not sure where, you know, I'm not an arborist, and I'm sure we've been given reports recommending the removal because of that.
Thank you, councillor Backer. Any further speakers? Okay, that being the case, councillor Greig would like to sum up.
Look, I'm happy to sum up, and I think councillor Backer makes a a very good point, in fact, that this has been subject of discussion for some time. There has been an approval made in the body outside of chamber, which I'm not going to comment on to make sure that no one is in conflict to that. But the intent of the motion here is really just to receive a note report and to inform the lead petitioner. So I just want to be very clear. That's what I've moved. I can't move item 2 because there is no action that we've decided as a council. As is normal practice for petitions, when they come in, we do exactly that. We note it, receive it, and then advise. I would encourage the deputy that if there were issues that came out of the community reference group that didn't seem to be appropriate, that should be reported up to the CEO as appropriate for investigation. But that's not part of the petition as such, so I'm not going to comment on that. But that should absolutely be reported through, and so that can be dealt with. But I commend the motion, items 1, points 1 and 3.
Thank you. Just from a procedural point of view, do we just strike item 2?
it hasn't been moved, so it's not in the.
Okay. That being the case, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? 3. All those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so let's then go forward to item 8 again, deputations. 8.1, parking on Vine Street. I'd like to invite Carl Small to approach the level.
I just sit on the side, everyone can hear me. It's my first presentation, so and hopefully the last. So I apologise if I make any errors in the process.
So just confirming name and address in 5 minutes, and I'll give you a minute warning.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Carmel Small. I'm a local Vine Street resident living at 3 Vine Street, Prospect. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this deputation, and can I also take this opportunity to offer congratulations to you all on the outcome of the recent council elections and wish you well in your tenures. The focus of my deputation is twofold regarding parking issues on Vine Street, which I believe is an upcoming agenda item on a future council agenda. And I guess I'm well positioned, quite literally, to make comment as I reside at number 3, which is located almost diagonally opposite the Paddington Car Park. So firstly, as part of the deputation,
A recent survey from council given to rate-paying residents regarding proposed timed parking options was labelled as a consultation, which I don't believe was the case. And I refer to the IAP2 public participation spectrum, which is a document that details a consultative process and recognised internationally. And I noticed that Grace also mentioned consultation in her deputation. The second part of my deputation relates to providing a resident perspective on parking availability on Vine Street, which is the essence of a recent survey and a recent parking study. So in addressing my first point, residents have received 2 surveys over the last 12 months from council, which I'll now refer to as survey 1 and survey 2. But I think it can be proven that only using surveys doesn't necessarily capture the issues faced by residents on this matter, nor does it offer solutions. And I guess that's my point. How is council hearing the voices of residents in other ways to find a consultative outcome? In this scenario, there has been no opportunity for consultation and discussion through an open forum or focus group that involves residents. To provide some context to this, my residence at number 3 is an 1890s bluestone villa and recognised as a property of local significance as the original police station and courthouse for the city of Prospect. This information about the property is significant as it recognises that as such, the property does not have a driveway. And it doesn't have a driveway from the road for any off-street parking for visitors, family, tradespeople, deliveries, and most importantly, emergency access. Yes, we do have rear access for the parking of 1 car, which was designated before we purchased the property. We are a 2-car family, as most people probably are. And at one stage we were a 4-car family, but thank God the kids have left home. Therefore, in addressing my second point and from a resident perspective, the problem we face is that most of Vine Street from Broad Road upwards has parking issues between the hours of 8:30 a.m. to about 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. The previous council have already recognised this as an issue as they handed out 2-hour timed permits with resident exemption between January and May 2022, after numerous complaints from residents to deal with the construction of the apartment block next to Plainview. The trial would have worked well, except that council staff were also given resident exemption. Hence, the parking was still stagnant during that trial. And I guess it was disappointing to ratepayers that council employees were also entitled to a permit for free parking when they may not even live in the area and when no other businesses along Prospect Road make such allowances for their employees. So survey number 1 appeared not long after to obtain information about the trial with no opportunity for solutions moving forward. There's been no other or further communication with residents on this matter. However, I do believe a parking study on March 2022 was undertaken and results provided to council in August, but by council's own admission, any data could have possibly been skewed because it was undertaken during the trial period when permits were available to stakeholders.
1 minute to go.
Survey number 2 arrived late in November, which wasn't really a survey at all, but a proposal of 4 options of 2-hour time parking, this time with no consideration for resident permits. And in fact, all 4 options were quite similar. I'm not sure how these options were informed, given that survey 1 did not draw this conclusion from the data as shared at a previous council meeting. The other thing that the survey did was say that the majority of Vine Street parking has occupancy. However, this does not relate to the part of Vine Street where the time parking is being proposed. And also, if that 2-hour parking goes ahead as suggested, then that parking occupancy will be used by council staff and others who need to park all day, extending the unavailable parks in Vine Street.
Thanks, Carmel. That's the, unless you want to very, very quickly finish.
Yes, I just want to say that the reality is for us as residents that the parking problems are largely a result of council staff parking, as we have absolutely no issues with parking after hours or on weekends, unless there is, of course, an event, which we would expect then parking issues. So it can only be caused by one thing, and I would hope that some of the council members would consider some of these things that I've mentioned in future, the proposal when it comes to you as council for the 2-hour time parking.
Thank you.
With no resident acceptance, which I think is not appropriate for us.
Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
very much. Are there any questions?
I think we're taking questions.
Sorry?
We're not taking questions.
Oh, you don't want.
Well, we're not, we can't. take
Oh,
questions.
sorry. You actually put questions. Right. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, item 8.2, I'd like to invite James Maybank to make his declaration to council.
Should I sit over here? Anyway, James Maybank, 15 Devonport Terrace, Oakley.
So, James, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay,
I'll give you a warning when there's 1 minute to go.
excellent. And how do I? Okay, excellent, thank you. So good evening, City of Prospect, councillors and mayor. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. A small group of us decided to create a Facebook group called
I'm warning on my phone.
Let me stop that, it's the screen. Good evening.
I'm gonna
So
pause
it's
you.
very distracting.
I'm gonna pause that, James, and start it again. I don't want to rob you of your valuable seconds.
It's a very quiet one. Benefits of being a software engineer, eh?
All right, we're ready to go.
Okay, excellent.
Let's start again.
Start again.
Ready, set, go.
Okay, good evening, City of Prospect, councillors and mayor. Thank you for allowing me to present tonight. A small group of us decided to create a Facebook group called the Overcam Community Space just 2 months ago, just over 2 months ago. We are now 90 plus like-minded local residents on a mission. Sorry, I probably should have changed that before, but anyway, our primary goal is to gather support to do something meaningful with the empty block with no clear future between Oakingham train station and Churchill Road. Estimated to be approximately 2,500 square meters. So that's the space there. Torrance Road, just below. So DIT has owned this land for some time. Some residents say approximately 30 plus years. It is currently used as a storage depot for the bridge works, which is near completion. PTPA state that there are no current plans for greening this space. Since initiating conversation about the empty block, I've heard many great community-led suggestions for this space, such as an urban forest, community garden, fruit tree orchard, nature play for kids, and potential art opportunities. This space could become an urban oasis, producing countless benefits for wildlife, community, business, mitigating the effects of climate change, and a more attractive prospect. I'll mention more about it free time. Unfortunately, we are starting to see graffiti appear on the bridge and the fences nearby. You can see in the diagram. These spaces could be covered with more attractive street art to minimize the graffiti. Here are some pictures from our first community gathering on the 15th of January, Sunday late afternoon. The event was organised at short notice, but we still had 20+ enthusiastic locals attend, including councillors Barnett, Virginia Wynn, and Alison Thacker, and Mayor Larwood. This was a prime opportunity for locals to have their voices heard. On Tuesday, the 17th of January, MP Lucy Hood, Mayor Larwood, and myself had an opportunity to share our thoughts about the unused space. I personally felt the leaders were positive and understood the community's request for action. Our group is also interested in activating the space under the bridge. The highlighted space here is approximately 960 square meters. Suggestions from the community have included pop-up markets, portable cafes, food trucks, events, maybe fringe events, something like that. The site has water supply, 2- and 3-phase power, very nice night lighting and video surveillance. There is good traffic due to train station users, cyclists. This is workers, families, and fitness groups, and it's easy to access. It's easy to access both Prospect and Charles Sturt, so both residents on both sides are able to travel under the bridge. Activation of this space will also reduce vandalism and unwanted activity that can typically be under a bridge and a train station sort of setting. So what we want, support to green this empty block and make it into a space that we're all proud of. This includes council's backing when requesting permission to use the land, enable and empower the local community to decide and drive green activities, and provide water supply. And regarding the space under the bridge, encourage activity under the bridge through business opportunities, organise events and activities with Charles Sturt Council. This will create a lovely social hub within Oakden. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, item 8.3 on the agenda, Prospect Bowling Club. I'd like to invite Rob Clutterham to make his deputation to council.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for allowing me to present tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rob Clutterham, Prospect Bowling Club, Holland-Grove Avenue, Broadview. Our bowling club is located on the grounds of the Broadview Sporting Precinct. The proud century-old, history as the only bowls club in the council area, and it provides sporting alternatives for people of all ages in the community. Importantly, our club is one of the few provides opportunities for senior residents, both female and male, and allows them to play and continue to play competitive sport throughout their life. The property is council owned. The clubhouse and grounds with minimal investment has changed very little over the last 60 years. 2 or 3 years back, our requirements were listed in a very welcome and much heralded Broadview Sporting Precinct master plan. Unfortunately, the master plan from the bowling club's point of view is no longer mentioned in the council's business plan. Over the past 2 financial years, the club's operating budget has been steady at $180,000 with little or no profit, with a membership of only 100 full members and the club is run entirely by volunteers. We do have a contract greenkeeper to service our 3 lawn green, and this is our greatest expense, $2,500 every fortnight all year, and he only does the green. Our main supply of water costs have averaged $12,000 per year over the last 4 years. I'm not aware of any other club in the council area having to pay direct water costs. A significant portion of this water is supplied
with extensive gardens and lawns around the boundary of the property. No council support is provided in maintaining these gardens, although council does look after the rest of the precinct. The club could reduce the greenkeepers' labour costs and overuse of water by updating to an automatic pop-up watering system. Such a system would align with the current council asset management practice. The club currently has end-of-life, worn-out, heavy and time-consuming drag hoses that need to be set up, operated and dismantled every Sunday and Monday. Hundreds of fittings, sprinkler heads and connectors require constant repair and replacement. And necessary ongoing maintenance and occasional vandalism does cause delays and results in wasteful watering being necessary in the heat of the day. Almost all other bowling clubs have, with external financial support, discontinued this form of watering and moved to a smart pop-up system. This year, a few of us worked very hard to get ahead of our budget and to help with the cost of the new system, something that has become very urgent. In December, we submitted a grant application for state government's community recreation and sports facilities program, asking for a grant of $56,496, a figure we have to match. We obtained a fixed price quote for $113,000 from Green Eden of Jets Cross to identify the cost to include in the bid. Others requested the quote did not respond or would only quote a 30-day price. The state government has severely reduced the total pool size of this grant by 80%. What had been a $25 million annual grant is now a little over $5 million. There are 42 other bowling clubs who have made applications, and I'm aware that there are 34 hopeful cricket applications. There would also be football, soccer, lacrosse, hockey, baseball, etc., seeking a piece of the pie. Although we've made a very good case and garnered support from all local MPs, there's obviously no guarantee of success. So your Director of City Works, Sam Delena, has in his letter of support stated that if successful, that it would improve water efficiency, reduce overall contracting costs for the club, align with the Broadview Master Plan, reduce the club's operating costs and achieve environmental and sustainability outcomes. So I'm asking in the 23-24 budget that council make provision to assist us with this essential investment. Grant applicants are scheduled to advise of the outcome of their bids by late February. If we're unsuccessful, I ask that council provide at least the amount we seek from the grant. If successful, I ask that council make a contribution to relieve us of some, if not all, of the nearly $57,000 we will need to provide. We do have other pressing infrastructure needs, but none as urgent as this one.
Thank you, Rob. Spot on. Thanks very much, Rob. So that brings us to the end of our deputations. Item number 9 on the agenda, questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice?
Yes, given the public question time, questions asked and other matters that have been happening, I would like to ask, what powers does Prospect Council and/or the SA Planning Minister have to declare a special planning zone to look at the area, including Rosary and Prospect Primary Schools, and Prospect Childcare Centre, and Staples Court and the shopping centre. So the area bounded by Gladstone Road, Prospect Road, and Olive Street, and that part Braun Road.
Can I direct that to the CEO?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Lachlan. I withdraw that, Mayor Larwood. Through you, Mayor Larwood. My apologies. Look, my initial, I was thinking of an answer to the question before I said it, and it just came out. My apologies. look, I don't know is the answer. We may have to take that one on notice unless Mr. Pearce or Ms. Giles, you can answer. Yeah, we'll have to take that on notice, councillor Barnett, if that's
Mhm.
okay.
Good, right, thank you.
Special planning zone,
Yes,
minister or council.
and or, yeah. Because oh, am I allowed to?
Just
It's
to
a
clarify.
question.
Yeah.
My question is that, I think I understand that the SA Planning Minister has certain powers, question mark.
We will get back to you on that one, council.
Right,
Sound like a question, nicely. Thank you, councillor Barnett. Councillor Back.
Yeah, look, back in the council meeting on the 13th of December 2022, I moved a motion which was supported unanimously to provide a submission to the expert panel on the planning system implementation review, and for the mayor and resolve to write to Nick Champion, the Minister of Housing. Have those two things been done through the chair?
I haven't written a letter to the Minister, CEO.
Through you, Mel, I directed that this happened, and my understanding was it had happened. Mr. Pearce, can you clarify whether those letters have gone?
Those, through the mayor, those letters, both those letters, including the submission to the expert panel, are in final draft form at the moment.
Excuse me, through the chair, the submission date was the 16th. That was explained in the council meeting, which was the purpose of the motion.
16th of
December.
December.
Through email, my understanding is there's an extension of time to the 30th of January that I can give some internal organisational reasons why it might have been taken a little longer than we thought. In particular, given that our assessment managers are away on parental leave at the moment. But having said that, we'll make sure that they are submitted by the date, and if they're in final draft, we'll have them ready.
Thank you, CEO. Any further questions on that matter, councillor? Okay. Any further questions without notice? That being the case, we'll move on to item 10, reports for decisions. 10.1, SA Public Health Council nomination outline on pages 13 to 19 with a recommendation on page 13. I'd like to recommend that we suspend formal meeting procedures for, 15 minutes. Should we need 15 minutes to facilitate a discussion and finalise nomination for item 10.1. All those in favour? Against? Carried by enough. Okay, suspending meeting procedures until 8:28 precisely. So what we're looking for here is a nomination for this council. And I believe that Director Pearce has expressed an interest in being nominated, and Councillor Groot has expressed an interest as well.
I haven't, at this point, I probably need to leave, but yes, I would express interest.
Yeah, okay. Yes,
So Mel, I would just invite Director Pearce to express whether he's still interested, given the comments in the report.
Look, through the mayor, I would express that, given the interest from Councillor Groot, I'd like to withdraw my nomination. Given the fact that Councillor Groot is far more qualified, in my view, appropriate nomination for this particular role.
thank you. Yes. Okay, I'll believe you can go.
Thank you.
So you're looking for a motion with Councillor Groot's name there.
Yeah, but just confirming that the reason that Mark has decided to leave and so the contribution is because there's a payment involved for someone who's representing this council. So looking for a nomination for this position, Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I nominate Councillor Mark Groot to be considered as a nomination for the South Australian Public Health Council.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak? Oh, hang on, are we speaking now or?
Well, there's no, it's suspended.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry, yeah.
I intend to when we
Sure.
go back from
Are there any other nominations?
I'm hungry, that's why.
All right, so given that's the case, it looks like councillor Greta has been nominated. So we don't need to stay at session any longer, we can move back into session. So 8:15, we're moving back into session. Okay, so recommendations there for you to review. Do I have a mover?
Yes, as I indicated.
Would you now like to speak?
I'm very happy to nominate councillor Mark Good for the nomination to the South Australian Public Health Council. He comes with a given CEO of a state ambulance association and other background that he's had. So I think he would be eminently qualified and suitable.
Thank you, councillor Bonet. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak?
I don't think I've put it any better words than Councillor Barnett. I think Councillor Groot's more than qualified and would be a perfect fit for the role.
Thank you, councillor Nelson. Does anyone have anything further to add? That being the case, I would like to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll just give a minute for councillor Groot to rejoin the meeting. Congratulations. Okay, moving on to item 10.2 on the agenda, formation of council assessment panel member selection working party. I might also recommend very please suspending meeting procedures for 5 minutes. You should be there. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, so that's until 8:22. So we're looking to appoint myself and councillors to the council assessment panel selection panel. I believe currently councillor Barnett and councillor DeBacker are on the selection panel or have been on the selection panel in the past.
Yes, so through you, Miller, the last selection panel consisted of Mayor Lachlan at the time, councillors Barnett and councillor Backer.
Okay. I don't think it prescribes how many people should be on that panel. Does it? Okay. So do we have any nominations?
Might I ask a question?
Certainly.
Through governance, is there an issue? I mean, based on my experience last night at the meeting, is there a conflict with me being on the CAP, also being on the selection panel?
Under the Act, there are two conflicts. There's general and material conflict. For you to have a conflict under the Act, you would need to, you just get the section of the Act up. You would need to have a benefit or gain or loss suffered directly or indirectly to you personally or pecuniary, which does not affect you here in this instance if you were on this particular panel. Or if you had a general, that there was a conflict between your members' interests and the public interests that might lead to a decision that is contrary to the public interest. I do not think.
Based on what I read, I don't believe there is. So
Right.
based on that, I would like to nominate myself.
Thank you, councillor Nelson. Do we have any other nominations?
I'll nominate myself.
You can spell it. Okay, so that's the same number as before. Are we happy to go with those two councillors as the nominated councillors?
Are we in session?
No, we're out of session.
No, are we allowed to talk?
Yeah, we're out of session another 2
Okay.
minutes.
So just for people that are in the room, I've been on the selection panel before.
It's incredibly frustrating. One of the things we specifically called for last time was experts in heritage. The challenge was, unless they've got that qualification, which is a planning qualification, even if you've been an expert in the field for 30 years, if you don't have this specific, you know, whatever, you can't recruit them. So that's some of the feedback that we've already given to the state, is that we need more social planners, landscape planners about places and spaces for people. At the moment, we're given a very short list of people that generally come from the planning industry that work in the private sector. And this is the frustration. So they're also I mean, I understand about the independence, and this is why I haven't put myself on the panel. And it's been incredibly frustrating because often those really good people are also on the advocates and they're seen as impartial, not impartial. So it's incredibly difficult position to be in. And it's about amenity. It's about putting the community at heart. And actually sort of thinking about, you know, these long-term problems, because the thing is, you can make a decision like that, but we have to live with it for the next 50 years. And so the system is, you know, I've given my feedback, and the council has too. I wish they had given it in December last year when we put the motion through. But that I know there are conversations happening. But look, I'd really, you know, obviously I wish that you guys get the right candidates. And I would hope that you focus on those things and the feedback that we're getting from our community in the selection of those independent members.
Well, put councillor back. That's a great.
Just, sorry, just a brief question. Sorry if I've missed this in the report. Who makes the appointment? Is it council or the committee? The council.
Looks like it's presenting council the recommendation.
Yeah.
That's your question.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, sorry. I should have read the recommendation.
So we put it in the recommendation.
Yeah. Didn't read that.
Any further
Thank you.
questions? Anything else before we go back into session? Like that. Okay, so pulling us back into session at 8:22. So we have two nominations, being Councillor Nelson and Councillor Barnett. I'm just wait until they get added. Here.
Yeah.
Thank you. So do we have a mover for the recommendations? Deputy Mayor Greco would like to speak to the.
Good luck.
Look forward to you summing up.
We're up for it.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stanley would like to speak to the motion.
I'm good, thanks.
Has anyone else got anything new to add? Otherwise, we will call for a vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I knew you were waiting to sum up and consent, and I almost missed that opportunity. So Councillor Greco.
As I said earlier. Good luck.
Thanks. Thanks very much for your fantastic summary. I'd like to put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Carried unanimously. Congratulations and good luck.
Nice work.
do our best.
On 10.3, section 221 permits, internal working group, fees and charges, recommendations and system improvement. Outlined on pages 23 to 47, with a recommendation on page 23. Do I have a mover? Councillor Barnett would like to speak to the motion.
Yes, I'll move that way, and I think it's very good to be able to respond to feedback that's been brought to our staff and consequently to us as a council. So I think that's one of the good things. I would also just like to point out that I've had quite a few residents over a few years over under our charges at 5.1, which is about the extra bins that it costs $170 per annum. So I don't know. I have a question about, is that $170 for the extra bin? Does that just purely at a cost basis? So we're not making any profit on it. It's purely to allow for the cost of the extra pickup if you've got an extra bin.
CEO, can I direct that question to you?
Unless, Mr. Eskandari, you can answer that question, I might have to ask that you take on notice. Can you answer that question, Mr. Eskandari?
Not at the moment,
Oh,
no.
we might need to take that on notice,
No,
councillor.
that's fine. Mhm. No, that's all.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Deputy McGregor, would like to speak to the motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to second. I just want to clarify though, this paper is only dealing with the changes outlined on page 38, page 9 of the policy, which is under 6.1. So we're not, I just want to clarify that we're not opening up other fees and charges at this point. It's only in relation to 6.1. I just want to check my understanding. Is that's correct?
Yes, through email, I would, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. So just in relation to those, I was surprised at some of the numbers that we would be charging developers if we maintain our $15 per square metre rate. And I presume when we set the budget at the appropriate time, when we had this discussion, we might not have been aware necessarily of that impact. But the flip side of that is making sure that we do keep our assets safe. And I know that they're in the 10 years that I've been here, or 12 years, however long it's been, we've had conversations about different mechanisms to make sure we can protect our City of Prospect property and what that looks like. I just want to, probably another question is, or two more questions. One is that we will revisit this as part of the budget planning cycle anyway, I presume. In fact, all the fees and charges, is that correct, Mayor?
Correct, yeah.
Yes, through email, that's
Okay.
correct. Look, there are obvious, I mean, this issue raises a range of potential challenges, which we have done a lot of work internally to address and think through. Some of these issues may be, for example, the possibility of a sliding scale of charges or something to allow for this, because as the report discloses, these changes were originally made in good faith to try and address some of the issues with the smaller and medium-sized developers who are destroying our crossovers and footpaths and everything else, and essentially forcing us to sue them or expiate to try and recover. By attempting to solve one problem, we've created another. So that invites some further thought, but it's also flagged an issue that obviously was made more apparent to us as staff and a council with Bloom, which was the ongoing challenges in dealing with the impacts of that construction, and some of which were raised tonight, on surrounding residents and on visitors to the city. So what we're attempting to do is bring some flexibility into that discussion. But yes, in terms of the fees and charges going forward, we'll be addressing those very soon as part of next year's budget.
Thank you, CEO. Discussion.
Sorry, I'm still going.
So he's got 2.5 minutes to go.
So I'm just finding it very distracting. The gallery is also talking. That's one of that quite distracting. The other question I had was there's an existing capacity for the Chief Executive Officer to provide rebates or exemptions for fees. Does that get reported to council? No, I'm talking more broadly than just this particular thing, but does that get reported to council where those delegations have been exercised?
It's an interesting question. No, I didn't think so.
Okay. So I mean, I've seconded this, I can't move, and then I wouldn't intend to, but it would be interesting between now and the end of the financial year if there were exemptions made to fees and charges, particularly relating to this. I don't want to make it formal, but it'd be good to understand the impact of that maybe as we go through our budgeting cycle, to sort of understand the real time impact of the fees and charges, and whether developers have come to us as to ask us to either reduce them or to exempt them from it. As I'm not proposing to move anything because I can't and I wouldn't, but maybe it's just a comment from the CEO to hear that. It'd be interesting to know that as we go through the next 6 months.
Thank you, Deputy McGregor. Any further discussion? Councillor Stanley.
Yeah, I have just a couple of questions. One is from I had a question during the week from a resident regarding the toy library, and she was concerned that quite often she'd get toys that were missing pieces or didn't have batteries or whatever. And I notice in here that we've got a fee for missing pieces. Do we, this might be a question to the CEO, do we have many pieces that come back that people are charged for missing pieces? Oh, you can take it on notice. I'm just.
You're going to ask me.
Yeah, through the mayor.
CEO.
Ms. Taylor, can you answer that one, or do we have to take?
I already taken it on notice, but we do follow them up, but I couldn't tell you exactly how.
It just came through from a
Yeah.
resident that quite often she gets stuff that's missing pieces, missing
So,
batteries or whatever.
Yeah.
I noticed we do have a charge there. I was wondering if it was ever exercised. The second I had part through the mayor, We have dog registration down here and we have what is called a standard dog and a non-standard dog. And I can only assume by the fee that the non-neutered or the complete dog, as I think they call it in the trade, is $85 and the standard dog is cheaper. Is it possible to make the language in these things a little bit more clear so that people can just recognize what is a disex dog, what is a complete dog?
Would you rather pictures?
Pictures would be fine. I'm sure infographics would be helpful, but it's just. I'm sorry.
Got a question?
The question is, can we make the language more plain? Rather than, and so people, when they read these things, can actually understand what is what.
CEO, you think-
Through email, I would manage finance in the room will take that on board, but equally these fees and charges will be coming back to council for adoption again as part of this year's budget. So you'll have the opportunity to make that amendment yourself, councillor, sometime in June.
I look forward to seeing it already done.
Excellent. Maybe it will be. Hopefully it will be.
Thank you. Councillor Beck.
Yeah, hi, thank you for the joviality of this, but it's actually about the real impost to our ratepayers about construction fees. This is actually what this is about. And I was really actually quite struck by how this motion came to us, because basically a couple of developers have approached staff to reduce fees because of their costing impatience. So things are costing too much. And so I was taken aback, and I did ask us to talk with, because we had a workshop scheduled for January 17th, which we had nothing given to us. And so this could have been discussed in a workshop. One of the issues I have with this is it was recommended by staff to increase the fees and charges because of the damage that was being done. Now these, you know, look, I totally get it. And this is where I hate, the strong note, I dislike local government, and then there should be consistency for developers and surety around consistent fees and charges around, you know, the areas. So that, you know, if you're going to have a crane on the roadway, it's going to be X dollars per square meter, whatever. So the intent of this, I get it. They're trying to make things equitable across local government. But if you read carefully about the motion, what it actually talks to is a certain couple of developers that are building for the, was it the terminology? The community benefit. Now, that's actually not even defined in this motion. So through the chair first, I'd just like to ask the relevant party, what is community benefit and the relevant thing of development?
CEO, can I direct that to you?
Yeah, so through email, I would look, the intent of this is to respond to this council's community plan, which has been adopted by this chamber. And the intent of that plan includes a desire to push investment and traction. Now, I understand that there may be a different view around this table now to potentially what there was when the community plan was adopted. And I understand that maybe there might be a difference of viewpoint between what staff understand council might have meant by that versus what council may have actually meant by that. Certainly staff have interpreted that as meaning essentially we need to try and support investment in the city of Prospect where we can reasonably do so and where it is in the public interest to do so, noting that this council has an aggressive growth goal of 1% in revenue per annum, and that it's our goal, my goal, in fact, in my KPIs, to try and ensure that this council is geared up to deliver that. So part of this is attempting to essentially clear obstacles to enable that to happen. And this is an obstacle that we have identified. And I should point out that it's not one that developers have come to us cap in hand saying we want this. Part of our Director of Growth and Development's role is to go out and liaise with developers and ensure that they are having a decent experience in doing business in the city of Prospect, where a council that's not obstructionist to quality development. Because of course, you know, investors have a choice. They can go elsewhere if they wish. And of course, in those discussions, which I've directed Mr. Pearce to have, this feedback has been provided, and we're attempting to, again, build a process that firstly delivers on better community outcomes by utilising the permit process to create construction management plans that avoid the sort of experience we have with Bloom, where we can actually have some enforcement and some positive carrot and stick approach to things like parking, subcontractors and the like. and also to addressing a range of other issues that are hard to deal with outside of the expiation process. Mr. Pearce, is there anything you'd add to that?
Through the mayor, I just might address the mention of community benefits that Councillor Tobacco raised just a moment ago. The way that the section 221 permit fees were structured before was definitely a disincentive to the investment and bringing the funds into Prospect versus taking those investment funds to other parts of the city. And one of the key areas we're trying to do here is to take really just a more sophisticated approach. A more sophisticated approach to structuring these fees for the community benefit. Now, I'll list a couple of those community benefits. The first one will be an increase in the possibility of us collecting what is a reasonable and commercial market commercial rate compared to similar councils such as Northern Ireland, for example. And so that means that our potential income in these fees will grow, whereas some developers have actually just refused to play ball and would rather be expiated. And in expiations, there's a situation of distrust, and of course, the income for the council is of course lower. So it's a lose-lose. This is a win-win. And it also enables us to craft effective approaches to the permit and fee collection, which would create funds adjacent to developments to improve upon parks, to improve upon footpaths, to improve upon landscaping opportunities, and of course, engage in rectification of any damage. It also enables us to disincentivize poor behaviour and breaches of Local Nuisance Act, which we haven't really had the teeth to be able to do that. And so this hasn't been done without discussions with these parties to say, if a scenario where we would offer a situation which is commercially fair, not commercially prohibitive. For example, one developer has sold these apartments 3 years ago before COVID, and subsequent, costs increases and escalations has made the development very, very marginal. So to say that we might charge 300,000-400,000 for park occupation, and that this means it just does not go ahead, and we keep an empty vacant block of land until the next property cycle, which would be 5 to 10 years. So we look at the sale of those properties, the future residents of Prospect will benefit from those apartments, the retail and food offer underneath those apartments in the main street of Prospect, on balance, is a far more better outcome for the residents of Prospect that we're just seeking with council considered.
Thank you. Councillor Becker.
I just want to
Couple of
clarify
comments like that.
as far as speaking time, those questions be into my speaking?
I'm happy for you to
Yeah.
continue asking.
Okay, so
questions.
further to that, my first question wasn't answered in that it states here, we undertake works with demonstrable community benefit. This isn't talking about the community plan. So if you take a residential example for, you've got builder X over here and builder Y over here. So builder X approaches the council, say, well, I'm not going to pay my rates, I'm not going to pay the permit. So he trots off to council and asks, oh, well, I'm going to give, I'm not going to pay or else. And then, builder Y over here has to pay the rates and charges. So look, we're also representing developers as well as residents, as well as everybody. So I just want a clear policy, just as any other ratepayer or whatever, what does it actually mean, and why are some developers being charged less? So I did an estimate with 2 developments of 50 square meters each. Ordinarily at the current fee, you'd be getting 150,000, and without the fee, you'd be getting 75. So that's 75,000 is still got to come from somewhere with parking management and all the rest of it. The other issue is that you could still do the same thing and achieve the same thing by having a bond. And I don't know why we don't ask for bonds, because you can have 150,000 you pay to bond and 150 you pay for the permit. And if you're a naughty boy or girl, then you don't get the 150,000 back. And I just feel we should have been workshopped and our public should have been informed. And it's clear that some of our elected members maybe aren't over what's in the content of this. So I'll be asking it to be voted in parts. I certainly won't be voting for 2, 3 or 4. And I prefer to actually lay it on the table and come back with some bond options and have the community involved.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Any further discussion?
I just have a question. If another elected member wanted to move an amendment to include investigating the bond option as described by Councillor Backer. The move.
It's not a question just yet.
Pardon?
Doesn't quite sound like a question. Just yet.
My question is, can another elected member move an amendment to include the bond option
Oh, okay, yeah.
to be investigated? Because clearly it's mover and seconder and Councillor Back's spoken, so it's up to the rest of the elected members to perhaps put an amendment.
Yep, so we've got 4 elected members who haven't spoken yet who could move an amendment if they so desire, so. Doesn't apply. Okay. Councillor Twinswin. Okay, what the words of the amendment would be?
To add. Suppose if we vote for it or not, so you'll allow us to leave to the meeting to discuss, or is that possible? Or not?
I may, yeah. Look, I think it's worthwhile suspending meeting procedures for 10 minutes to further discuss, because I think this is something which there's a bit of interest and passion in making sure we get the right outcome. So looking for a vote to suspend meeting procedures until 8:52. Should we need to do so? All those in favour? Yeah, okay, that's good. Okay, so would you like to, do we want to try to get the words up first of all, then discuss the words, or is there further discussion that needs to be had in general before we?
Well, it's probably
look at that?
discussion, so I'll look, I'm not, as I asked, it would have been better to come back to the special meeting, but considers the amended, so instead of endorses, maybe considers the amended fees and charges register. Considers the delegation to Chief Executive Order. And then somewhere we don't have community benefit defined. So I just leave things that's really dangerous and leaves us open to who knows what. I get the intent. I totally get the intent, but like you have to make it clear to everybody. Undertake works. Yeah, it's like workshopping on the fly. Any suggestions from the CEO that would be manageable to have a bond option come back to us in a simple meeting?
So through you, Mayor Larwood, we've been exploring bonds for 12 months. It's not a simple process. I've administered bond processes at 2 other councils, and they are fraught with difficulty because essentially what you're doing is holding assets on trust for developers. I agree it is the optimum process in terms of holding security for developments and development agreements. And certainly it would be something we may consider, and certainly an alternative in this case, in a development agreement that might be informed by potential rebates, carrot and stick approaches in development agreements. This is essentially a bond in lieu, or a bond by a different name. The challenge with bonds, again, are the governance requirements and the administrative requirements of administering them, and the legal requirements of managing them in accordance with what is effectively a trust. It's not a straightforward process, and it is absolutely something that I would love to do if we had the administrative resources to do it. Because in essence, our biggest problem here, and the biggest reason we would use bonds, are not for the big ones. Normally you would use them for the $5,000 and $10,000 crossovers and footpaths and curb damage and tree damage and all the other damage that happens with the smaller developments, which is why we originally raised the fees to try and avoid creating the challenges of having to administer a bond process in the first place. We are looking at it and I haven't ruled it out. If members are absolutely committed to running a bond process and are prepared to resource the administrative burden it represents, which isn't going to be that significant in a council our size, but will not be insignificant due to the number of small 221 permits we have to administer, most of which would require a bond. I will encourage you to say that we're already looking at it and we haven't ruled it out. But again, if members are inclined to direct us to do that, then the appropriate response by way of a resolution would be that staff consider the possibility of imposing a bond process, that staff consider the possibility of imposing a bond process to support Section 221 permit framework. I think that will do it, and report back to council within a suitable time. I mean, we're about to enter into the budget process now. We have done a lot of thought on this, but the issue here is not necessarily a discussion around finance. The issue here is a discussion around the administration of bonds, which in theory are fantastic. It's just the back end administration of these. It adds audit burdens to the council, and it adds governance and regulatory burdens to us as well. So those are things we'd have to come back to you on and lay out.
Thanks. Councillor Rebecca.
Sorry, look, again, my hesitancy is that, again, you come back to community benefit. It puts, as a perception is we're a government body, we're answerable to ratepayers, we're not a commercial business. So to have that officer with no objective qualifiers, like how many work cover claims have they had, how many permit things have they had at other councils, that's at least objective. But to say, oh, this one's a good one, this one's a bad one, that's really kind of, to the perception to the community, is a real worry. So look, I'm probably not supportive of, going down this path anyway. I'd rather just see it come back at budget time as a review. And look, we're going to have to find the money from somewhere else. So look, Trin, if you want to put in for bond, you might get support around the floor and it might still go through. And I'm sure, I know staff are really keen because it's a way that they can work with the limited resources with the developers. But I'm just looking at it from a governance point of view and public perception point of view. That's my issue with this particular motion.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. So my understanding that CEO, you've already got delegated authority to make these decisions.
Through you, Bill Larwood, that's correct. I do, in order to waive fees and charges. And the reason we brought this report is to try and explain the circumstances under which we would exercise it. And the question of community benefit was raised. I hope that Mr. Pearce's explanation provided some examples of what that might look like. But in essence, is this development and its outcomes consistent with the community plan objectives of council? At its highest point, that's what we're talking about here. And examples may be, as Mr. Pearce outlined, you may find revenues through these construction management agreements might contribute, for example, to remediation and improvement of the facility being occupied. So, for example, if there was a car park occupied with a crane to support the development of a multi-story dwelling next door, we might put that money or some of it, anything we don't need to run the basic administration of the process, back into the park, back into the parking lot. That sort of a thing would contribute, I believe, to the community plan. Now, if that needs to be better defined, and you want to create a cricket pitch in which we're going to play, define what that looks like, then by all means, you may want to define that in terms of, does it support the community plan objectives directly? And that may be a way you could do it. But that's a hard thing to put clear rules down under. Again, though, I've already got the delegation. I'm trying to help council understand when I might exercise it and why maybe going forward we need to look at the register. That's what this report is
there a
about.
register that shows what fees you've already waived?
No, there's not. But we're talking about the fees and charge register here, though. That's what I'm talking about. So significant fees that I've waived, I honestly can't think of. I've waived 2 fees, both of them well under $2,000. So very few of them get to that 4-figure sum. So these are large numbers, which is why we brought this report
And
to you.
this is, it doesn't actually mention the numbers, and that's why I threw the figure of 75,000, you know, just for 250 square meters. And I think that's probably, as you can see, some of the details lost, some of the
Indeed. Members, it's a complicated exercise. We did our very best to report it as clearly as we could and provide the outline of as to why we felt this was potentially beneficial. Apologies if we missed the mark.
So yeah, I'm assuming that when you look to make these decisions, you do have a criteria through which to make them.
100%. And if I can provide some detail, and Mr. Pearce again covered this well, and the report talks of it. Where we know, for example, that a developer's either going to walk away or potentially want to pay a lesser fee, and the fee still covers our administrative costs internally, and we can potentially manage, in this case, an outcome that benefits the community by reducing the impacts of that development process on local residents. That is going to be one we're going to consider. And we'll, of course, negotiate the best deal we can with that developer. But those are the sorts of situations we're talking about, to preserve investment in the city of Prospect, good quality development that is minimal impact. There's no such thing as zero impact on nearby residents when you're building something big. But can we manage subcontractor parking, manage noise generation out of hours, manage dust generation, manage all these issues that create angst with nearby residents when there's a development happening on their doorstep? And can we incentivize that through either taking a fee from them and offering them a rebate when they do the right thing, or penalising them under the agreement, which would be a deed, a legally enforceable document that we wouldn't have to expiate them on, that we could just recover through civil courts, recover from them if they don't meet the requirements of the agreement. These are the sorts of situations we're talking about, members. So again, apologies if that wasn't clear, but it is a complex subject.
Thank you. We're out of our, I'm happy to suspend meeting procedures for another 5 minutes, because if we're going to consider an amendment, we need to get some words. So can I recommend suspending meeting procedures for a further 5 minutes should we need them? All those in favour? Against? Carried. So Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Look, it's a difficult one. I must have read this motion five times. And I can see the difference in everyone's opinion, and it's all valid. My personal experience, a little bit different to Councillor De Backer, but I think bonds and bank guarantees are a nightmare. They're a nightmare to manage, they're a nightmare to administer. But I'm also not confident without having some sort of a criteria that must be met in order for a developer to get a rebate. And without having access to know what criteria they have to meet. And I don't know if it's as easy as saying that what's the benefit, what's this, what's that, and it could be 5 or 6 or 10 criteria in order to qualify for a rebate. Again, I'm not talking about making a motion or amendment or anything else, but that was what I was kind of thinking of in the background, that if we were comfortable with a criteria they had to meet in order to qualify for a rebate, I'd be more comfortable with that.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Do you want to put that in?
Yeah, so we could probably change maybe the process to adding the criteria.
With associated criteria.
See, how simple would that be to put into to build a criteria that you could add part of your delegations?
So through your mail, you wouldn't need to put it in my delegations. What I'd need some guidance on is the sort of criteria you wanted in the agreements. Now, members, I need to warn you, no council that I'm aware of has ever done this. This is innovative and new. What we're trying to do is take an antiquated legislative process that doesn't work well for anybody and try and manage it in a way that delivers a good outcome for the community, but still enables investment. It's something different and new. Mr. Pearce, myself and the executive team have thought through how to address the sorts of issues we have with Bloom. And so in essence, we're going to have to sort of build the ship while we're trying to sail it. It will require us to put our heads together with some clever lawyers who are experienced, for example, in construction disputes, and understand how we might build this into a deed that we can work with the developers on in terms of numbers. You know, here's a prerequisite for you to get a rebate. Here's what'll happen. Here's the penalty you'll get if you don't meet the expectation. We'll have to, we kind of got to figure it out. But in terms of, if you want to guide us in some of the things that maybe will constitute, you know, when you get a rebate or when you get a penalty, we're happy to take guidance on that. I would caution you against making that list exhaustive, because every site, every development is unique. And certainly the ones we're talking about, you know, you've got some on Prospect Road, some off Prospect Road, some surrounded by residential, some in very densely commercial areas. You've got the differences between precincts like Main North Road and North East Road versus Churchill and Prospect. But if there are some consistent things you'd like us to consider, by all means, you're welcome to add them in, or we can talk about those further depending on where members.
So yeah, I agree 100%. I don't think it can be exhaustive. It needs to be 5 or 6 points. My idea behind this was really to protect you. And that is the fact that at the moment we've got the public who we're all answerable to. And, you know, at the moment you'll make a decision where, you know, as Councillor has said, you know, you can make a decision for developer A and say, well, we'll waive your fees because your development's 6 stories and worth $100 million to the council, whereas B, we're not waiving yours because it's only worth 80 million. So we're trying to protect you. And that's really what we're trying to do. So I think if we could kind of have staff consider the possibility of creating a list of criteria that is to be met in order to qualify for a rebate. How that works out would be ideal, I think.
Millard, I think if you'll indulge, Mr. Pearce might have something to add to this discussion.
Certainly.
Through the mayor, I just wanted to clarify that criteria is listed in the report and described when a recommended solution is detailed to the 2 case studies listed in the report. And the criteria centers around adherence to the Local Nuisance Act, A, and the deliverance, B, up at the end of a development of a pristine public realm. So they're the 2 key issues that are referred to in the solution. Around the Local Nuisance Act, for example, the criteria would be no, at the end of each 3-month billing period of these fees, no expiations in relation to Local Nuisance Act and the Litter Control Act. In other words, no dumping of materials, no water wastage, no noise breaches that have been reported, no fumes, no smoke. So that is a very sort of clear direction. And then no infringements as a result of errant tradie parking, big problem we had at Bloom, and subcontractors. So this would be at the CEO's discretion by meeting a developer, and those items would be in the deed. And then at the end of the development, a review of the public realm that would have to be handed back in pristine condition, the footpaths, the garden beds, the roadways, and then that would be the determination as to whether, if we agreed a bond to be returned, or whether the further rebate would apply that was agreed if that public realm was handed back in pristine condition. I just want
Thank
to
you,
clarify that.
I've got to pause back in the session because we're out of time. I just want to confirm that we've got a recommended amendment up there, which is asking staff to consider the possibility of imposing a bond associated criteria. We've kind of clarified that there is a criteria already in place. So is that still required, Councillor Nguyen, to be part of the amended motion? It's up to you.
I mean, are we happy with the criteria, or does it need to be included?
It needs to be spelled out.
Just a question through the chair.
Very fun.
If we leave it on the table, which means we don't vote for it, it can come back to us. But if we vote it down, it can't come back to us for 12 months. Is that correct?
The answer to the second one is, I believe, yes. The first one,
So through Mill, I would, the answer to the second question is not yes. If you vote no, it's not a rescission motion which would cancel for 12 months. So it doesn't sterilise the issue. The question lying on the table, Ms.
Through the chair there, if a formal motion is put lie on the table, that motion can only be brought back by resolution, and it needs to, when it comes back to council, it continues at the point of debate that it left.
It essentially kills it. Unless a member wants it brought back and start again from that point. Members, it may be preferable under those circumstances to defer the report to come back at another time, or to direct a step to be taken before we bring the report back at another time if you're uncomfortable. And members, I want to point something out. If you're not comfortable moving the portion of the motion that confirms my delegation to exercise the rebates, I will not exercise the rebates, even though I'm delegated to do so, because I really, given the nature of the content of this report, I feel uncomfortable doing that without you all being aware of it. The reason we bought this report is because I don't want to do that without you knowing I'm doing it and why. Which means that there are, and I need to be clear on this, a number of significant developments in the city of Prospect that are at imminent risk of falling over if that portion of the is not progressed. And I don't mean to put undue pressure on the council. That is just the information we've been provided. Whether or not we're being led up the garden path or not, that's what we are told. And it's, I feel my duty to bring that to you, given the situation.
Thank you, Steve. So we have to go back into session. Are we happy, Councillor Nguyen, with the wording in the suggested amended motion?
What's the last line?
I don't think we need that last one. I think that can go. Okay.
Yeah, is it members' intent that the criteria be attached to the bond process? Because I'm not sure that was, I don't know if I said that, I didn't mean to. Yes, with associated criteria could come out.
So we're simply asking staff to consider the possibility of proposing a bond process to support section 221 amendment framework and report back to council within a suitable time.
Well, I think it needs to be clarified the time.
Do you want to put forward, Councillor Nguyen, a specific time, say 2 months' time, or 1 month's time, or 3 months' time? Rather than a suitable time, that leaves it kind of open-ended.
That's going to be hard, a hard deadline to meet. Council, we've got a huge agenda in February too. I just need to warn you off.
Before budget.
Draft or final?
Well, we're gonna have to vote for it on budget, aren't we?
Not necessarily. A bond process isn't a fee. It's more a question of we take some money and we give it back to you if you do the right thing. I don't think it would need to be addressed in the fees and charges.
Okay. Okay, so 2 months, is that achievable, CEO?
It's a stretch, we'll try.
Okay.
2 to 3 months.
Give us a number.
Just say 3. It's probably,
So
it's up to you, but
March, April, May.
Sorry, could
So
I
that-
suggest we put a month and a year rather than 2 months,
Yeah.
just for historical purposes? So should somebody be reading this later on, they don't misinterpret 2 months. Just my little bugbear for a
you
minute.
could have the date of the meeting, I suppose. But
Well, normally
by
we'll just
where
say
are we?
by.
By March, by April,
So
by
it's
April
April,
2023.
May. And that gets into a budget process.
By April 10th.
It's up to you. Councillor.
Just generally.
The April council meeting's a defined date, so we'll have to bring it back on or before the April meeting.
All right, so we're gonna go back into session, and we're going to look for we'll go back into session first of all. We'll look for a mover and a seconder. Well, we'll look to confirm with the mover and the seconder if they're happy to incorporate the recommended amendment. And then someone may choose to suggest that we take the motion in parts. So we will now, right on time when I said 9:04, I'll now bring us back into session. Councillor Barnett, are you happy to?
Yes.
Councillor Group,
Is it yes or no answer?
just a straight yes and no, there's no debate.
Yes.
No, that's by now. Great, okay, so that's now incorporated in the motion. Would someone like to recommend taking the motion in parts?
I think Sorry, can't you just start?
Okay, I'm just going to decide that I'm going to recommend that we take the motion in parts. Great. All right, so that being the case. Part one, all those in favour. Just, has everyone had enough time to consider the amendment and we're all happy with that? Sorry, can I just ask the members of the gallery, it's great that you're here and keen to be part of what we're doing, but if you wouldn't mind refraining from talking whilst we're discussing and asking and answering questions. Thanks. So item number one, all those in favour? Sorry?
I don't think the move is summed up yet.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Councillor,
yes.
that was about 24 hours ago when you moved it, so I erased it from my memory.
Right, well, I think, you know, where the intent is there that we don't want developers to, you know, basically trash our city. And how do we get them on side, you know? So I think we're working through that process to be able to do this now, even though it has taken us a bit of time to get there, but we are getting there. And I think it's about, you know, how do we get that compliance? So our director and some other have explained, you know, about how this will assist. I only wish we had this before a level of development on Devonport Terrace was started. Because I think that's been a prime example of how things haven't worked all that well. And also, yeah, I think there's good opportunity in there for a review for benchmarking. We're seeing the start of that with the list of what other councils are doing. And it most probably behoves somewhere that we can try and get through, you know, with the local government association, that this is an area that really needs, you know, to be looked at. So I think I'll leave it there.
Okay, so we're taking this in parts. Part one, all those in favour? All those against? Carried unanimously. Part two, all those in favour? Against?
Division.
Carried. Division. Okay, so division. So all those who voted against need to put their hand up.
Stand up.
You can stand
I
up.
can stand.
Stand up, hand up.
Gallery.
It's not me for once. I'm
Not rolling it or standing up. Motion is carried though. Part three, all those in favour? 3 against. Councillor Hyde, I'm not sure whether I saw your hand up. No, let's go again. So all those in favour? All those against? So motion not carried.
And division.
4-3. Division. Okay, all those who voted against, please stand up. You weren't against, weren't you?
No, I wasn't.
No,
Just
that's
wait
cool.
to-
Hang on.
Sorry,
4-3 against.
I kind of
Four,
put my hand up and then
So motion
something
carried.
quickly.
You can change
No, I
mine
didn't.
to division.
I didn't change my mind. I just didn't put my hand up.
Well, it makes
High
a
enough
decision.
because I was-
No, the motion is carried, 4-3. Sorry,
Yes.
Sorry.
And then, so now you carried the motion.
let's be clear with our handage. I'm not sure whether that's an official word, but
No, I said I did put it up,
they're just, let's,
that not high enough.
yeah,
and-
let's make it,
because I was in thoughts.
have a hand putting up workshop. Coming up soon. Item 4, so just to confirm, motion was carried and the division was called for item number 3 by Councillor Backer. Correct. Part 4, all those in favour? See some big hands.
Yeah.
Okay, against? Motion carried.
And division.
Division, all those in favour, please.
Stay seated. Stay seated.
Stay seated. All those against that?
It used to be. Yeah, I mean, well,
It was the other way around.
it's changed the purpose, wasn't it?
Okay, so item number 5, all those in favour? Against?
In favour, sorry, in favour.
Let's do that again.
Sorry, I'm still subject.
Let's get our big hands up. All those in favour?
Yeah, I'll go with
Against? Carry unanimously.
Can I, just a point of governance, councillor against councillor in the win, we have 2 councillor in the wins. I know one's not here at the moment.
Good point. Thank you, councillor Stanley.
If she's absent, you can't.
That's what they say.
All right, let's plow on. Item 10.4 on the agenda, Percy Street Reserve Concept Plan outlined on pages 48 to 57, recommendations on page 49. Do I have a mover? Deputy McGregor would like to speak to the motion.
Look, I'm going to move it. This has been back and forth quite a bit, I have to say. I'm never a real big fan of putting money forward from future budgets, but we have gone out to consultation a couple of times with this. Quite frankly, if we wait until next year to do it, we're going to add another $50,000 or an amount that's going to be above and beyond the budget we've got now. I think overall it's a great result. Really important to support parks, particularly in this area. It's been on our park strategy for some time. And my view is that we just need to get on and do it. So I'm supportive of the motion.
Thank you, councillor Grigg. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stanley, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Or would you like to speak to the motion?
Not at this particular time, thank you.
Okay.
Reserve right. I know.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? We'll go councillor Backer and then councillor Nelson.
Just a quick question. It says that a public art proposal has been included with the concept design and this council city-wide public roundtable. I'm just wondering, a bit like what happened down in the overpass, the bridge. Is it possible that the artistic interpretation can have 2 functions? So, you know, play equipment is artistic, or it's a functional art. I'm just wondering if there's a kind of brief around that. So I know, like the gates, for example, at the playground at Memorial Gardens are quite successful. You know, so with those colourful whatever. Like, and I know everything is expensive. So like fences are expensive and slides are expensive. So if it could be functional as well as creative, artistic, if it makes sense financially, I think it's good to be considered. So probably more of a financial than anything.
Thank you, councillor Backer. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, just note that clearly I wasn't here when this was budgeted, but just concerns with a 50% increase in less than 12 months. I'm just hoping I can get some sort of explanation to what that increase is. I know that there's an addition of the dog fence and some upgrades to irrigation, but it's a far cry from a 50% increase.
I know some of those items were as a result of consultation process, and we voted on some of those changes, and I guess the budget has come back. I'd probably also suggest that from when the budget was first set to now, the cost of doing everything has increased significantly. So I would like to direct that question to the appropriate director.
Indeed. Mr. Eskandari, if you can address that, please, coming to the table.
Mayor, I've listed a few items that contributed to the cost increase. So it's about $20,000 for the fencing that was resolved by council in August. And then since the initial estimate was developed, it's about 18 months ago, we've had a big surge in construction costs. So my estimate is around $30,000. The cost of construction and buying material has gone up. The new estimate has a larger contingency allowance built in it, $32,000 more than the initial estimate. And that is because of the volatility of the market. And then there are other items built in this, you know, the 13 weeks maintenance program has been built into the capital budget rather than coming out of the operating budget. Because of the nature play, some of the play equipment and auditors required, that wasn't considered in the initial cost estimate. And the initial cost estimate was done based on a very draft concept. So the number of plans that has been suggested for the parks increase, that's about $7,000 additional cost, and also we've done some contamination testing, and while it is meeting the standards, it's a different soil classification, so the cost of disposal of that material has gone up as well. That have been considered before this.
Sorry, I'm not sure how to make a request but obviously in my line of work, we're seeing a substantial decrease now in international freight and construction materials. For the fact that this isn't going to tender until April to June, can we request that when it does go for tender, that we actually push some of these contractors hard for reductions in construction costs and materials?
Sounds like a good suggestion.
Through you, Miller, we always do. We do our very best, and I think I would be not just hopeful, but I'm reasonably confident we'll be giving you a significant chunk of that contingency back. If I think the staff are taking a precautionary approach here based upon the insane nature of the world economy right now. I think that's wise, but hopefully what we'll end up doing is giving money back to the budget. That's fine.
Thanks, Ian. Councillor Bay.
Yes, with regard of the $13,000 for refreshment of existing garden beds, including topping up mulch. I mean, that's important, but are we looking at this as like its own cost centre? Wouldn't we be possibly including that in our normal budget process? Should be doing that? Question.
Good question. CEO.
Yeah, so through email, I would, Mr. Eskandari addressed that. The approach there is to capitalise that expenditure as a component of the project for 14 weeks of maintenance into the project. And part of that, members, is to deal with issues that have been raised in this chamber on previous projects where we've had contractors come in and plant trees and the wretched things die and we end up replacing them. This way we get some continuity and hopefully some more surety from the installation contractors that these trees are not only planted correctly, but that they take. So that's the intention there in terms of capitalising that component of expenditure. And you're right, it will reduce the operating costs of that. So in other words, there's swings and roundabouts there. There will be some potential saving to the maintenance and operating budget as a result of us not having to maintain those on the back end for the first 14 weeks.
Oh, that's subsequently in this, so it's the over the 14 weeks,
Yes.
so that gives it a chance. Yeah, good. And sorry, anyway. Oh, yes, with the art and that, and so I think it was quite strongly thought that we need to have that the R.M. Williams sort of theme and all that. So I hope that that will be strongly the brief that is given to the art, the concepts, and I think we were hoping perhaps to have them come back to us. Because we've had a few surprises and then had to not waste money, but spend money on redoing them because of feedback from the community and elected members in one section. So that's my understanding of that. Yeah, so that's all.
CEO, is the Citywide Public Art Roundtable given a brief? Or do they make their own assessment and go for it?
Ms. Taylor?
Through the mayor, certainly, you are correct, Councillor Barnett, the R.M. Williams and that historical theme will be built in through the mural, or be a community murals to actually get the community involved, whether that's in designing a concept or actually physically painting. They will be led by a professional. So that concept is with a round table. I'm more than happy if you wanted to possibly workshop what that mural might look like, or I can bring it back to council's decision.
Thanks very much. Okay, is there any further discussion on this motion.
I have a quick question. I know I've spoken. 14 weeks, is that standard, industry standard for defect rectification, or is that?
It's obviously it's going to be different for every asset. Mr. Eskandari, why the 14-week number in this case?
Through the mayor, that's because of lessons learned from other projects, but the defects liability is usually a year, but on plans and making sure they watered appropriately so they don't die, we usually put 3 to 4 months of maintenance responsibility on the contractor, and from the council stuff will take over. But overall, in terms of, defects on the equipment and fencing, that would be 12 months.
So if the weed mat comes up through the bark or something like that, who fixes that? Is that?
For the first 4 months, that will be the contractor.
And that is that industry standard or something the City of Prospect is sort of just having their procurement?
Mr. Eskandari?
I think it's a lesson that we took from Devonport Terrace streetscape work. And we implementing that on a number of projects, for example, Davis Terrace that we going awarding the contract rather. So we make sure that we put at least 4 months of maintaining the funds on the in the contract.
If I can add some meat to the bones to that, it is not industry standard. Industry standard is mostly the industry doesn't do this. They place the risk of the plants on us.
Yeah.
We are doing this now based upon past experience. We have previously used normal LEGAT contracts, local government procurement contracts to inform this sort of purchasing, which do not have this built in. We are now building it in due to our experience with this very issue in other parts of the past.
Are we pushing it as far as we can go? I mean, before they get pushed back?
So I will say that every week you add adds cost,
Okay.
which is why we're here. So what we're trying to do is find a happy medium where the risk versus the cost is balanced out. And what we're hearing from staff is this is the recommended number.
That's the butter zone.
We hope.
Okay, any further discussion? Anything else to add? That's the case, councillor. Councillor Lewin?
Attended the access and inclusion meeting recently, were those considered in the plans or the recommendation here that's been made?
So yeah, initially they provided all sorts of recommendations that they considered. And then I think we mentioned that in the report, we're still up and because we haven't finalized the design, we're still up and look further.
I should point out part of the reason why we're dealing with a $215,000 original budget, which is now more than that, but compared to our original a couple of years ago was 150. Part of it was again accommodating those sorts of considerations into the design.
Fantastic. Okay, so Councillor Groot, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you. Look, thank you, staff, for bringing this back. I think it's, as I said, it's been kicking around now for a long time. And I think we're close to having a really good result. I was also going to mention just about access and inclusion. I'm looking forward to that coming back as part of the requirements of it. And we can give it a big boot in terms of the art. It's fantastic. I like the Aaron Williams theme to it. So I look forward to, sorry, Matt. I look forward to commend the motion to everyone.
Okay, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Hands up, good, against? Carried unanimously. Right, on a roll. Sort of. Item 10.5, strategic community plan, community engagement. Outline on pages 58 to 62 of the recommendation on page 82. Do I have a mover?
Yes,
Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to the motion?
just very pleased to see us going to number 3. Sounds like I'm all exciting, doesn't it? A level 3 community engagement process, consult, involve and collaborate. I think these are great projects to get that collaboration part and all the different sort of, different workshop things and that can how people can actually be involved in this. So very happy with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder? of the competition. Councillor Nguyen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, so these were one of my sponsoring plans, for the term. And yeah, I definitely got that. In neighbours, that read through this and, being to be, heavily involved.
Thank you, councillor Nguyen. Do I have any further discussion, anything else that hasn't been already said? Did I say councillor Nelson?
Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong, the last community engagement plan was completed in 2019.
Through Mayor Lava, it's February 2021.
Are we able to be forwarded a copy of that so that we can internally have a look at how we're tracking?
So through Mayor Larwood, I've circulated our business plan, which includes the next 5 years of objectives and our performance against each of them. If members haven't seen that, we can certainly circulate it again. The community plan towards 2040 is also on our website. But what it doesn't have is the reporting, of course. But yes, the business plan is available and our current progress against it has been circulated. We're also updating that right now. The intention is to bring that back as part of our discussion in February on starting a new community plan process, whereas members, I've discussed with many of you the need to have a discussion around what we continue, what we stop and what we start in the context of our current community plan as we build our new one. So that will be an integral part of this process as we move forward. But if I can say, if you don't have that, the progress to date against the community plan, it was reported to the end of the last council as well. We can absolutely provide that. Would all members appreciate a copy? We could circulate it again. If you like.
Might have missed it, I'm sorry, but
I'll make a note to circulate it again.
Councillor Back.
Did you want to say anything else?
No, thanks.
Yeah, so further to that, you know, it may or may not be available. Sometimes it's the raw community engagement and actually the letters and things that people write. And obviously we've been, you know, speaking to our community quite a lot, given the election recently. I suppose one of the other things I'm really interested in, if there's any financial implications to this, because I'm really keen on this as well. Because I think now every time we do a thing where we've got to do this thing, we have to keep in mind, what are we not going to do? Because, you know, we've got to fund these things that we all want to do. What are we not going to do? So is there a financial difference between the current level we're doing to a level 3 consultation, maybe through the chair to the director?
So through you, Mayor Larwood, we had always intended to do a level 3 consultation. This report simply puts council on notice that that's what we're going to do as part of this process. Members, I've got to be honest with you, I don't think there's any option in this case. We have to do this. And I think the director's intent in bringing this to you is to start this process ahead of our workshop in February. In particular, with twilights coming up, there's a sense that there's a real opportunity to get some in front of the wave consultation going to guide our discussions as we move into that process. But from a funding standpoint, we are equipped to do this, yes.
Yeah, so I'm really excited as well, and I already spoke briefly to the director, and I know we had an award-winning consultation. You know, it was basically red dots, yellow dots, and green dots with pictures, and I think that's a really quick, effective way for people to engage, and obviously we can do on from there. So, look, I commend the motion, and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, councillor Backer. Anyone have anything further to add that hasn't already been added? Deputy Mayor Gray.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm similarly share the enthusiasm. I just want to say a couple of things. One is we heard tonight from one of the deputies talking about IAP2, which is what our consultation framework is based on. In fact, I think we've reviewed this twice in my time in council. And I think if we can try and promote as much as we can that we do use the IAP2 methodology, it's really important. And it is a really solid way of going about consultation. That all said, I'm just a bit nervous about going out to community before we put any sort of fencing around what it is we want to do, particularly at twilight, because the time is going to be a bit off in terms of we won't have had the conversation before it goes to twilight. And I think one of the other deputies tonight talked about the Broadview Oval Master Plan that we went out with, you know, eight years ago or so, offering a $15 million project that we're never really going to deliver on. So I'm just aware of trying to temper expectations by the public in terms of what we can do versus what they think we can do. So that'll kind of work itself out. That's just kind of, you know, something that's on my mind. The third thing I was just going to mention is this does bump into consultation, statutory consultation with the budget. And so just to flag that, I'm sure director and the CEO's got that under control, but it is difficult if we're going out on two different topics at the same time. There can be a bit of consultation fatigue. And the budget consultation, I'm really passionate about getting that right, because we hear people talk about rates, and even tonight we heard people talk about all the other things they want to happen, or don't do this and do this and change that. To Councillor Backer's point, every time you make a decision that costs money, so or you're not doing something else. So I'm just passionate to make sure our consultation on the budget is good and proper and upfront, and as alongside this, but they just might bump into each other a bit, so we'll just have to be aware of it. Otherwise, yeah, bring it on.
Thanks, Councillor. Anything further to add that hasn't already been said? It's like we're ready to go back to Councillor Barnett.
Nothing further to add.
Yes, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Item 10.6, internal audit program extension of contract outlined on pages 63 to 65 with a recommendation on page 63. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nelson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, look, I attended the audit meeting last week, I think it was, because I had something better to do. Found it very interesting, so it was just good to see some of that presented, and have no issue with this motion put forward.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Backer, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I think it's with continuity, and the thing I like about it, and unless I'm mistaken, there's no financial implication, it's just extending the period of, but I think it's really important work that we do, because that work can potentially highlight savings in some of our processes, or minimising some of the risks that it costs us money.
Yeah, good point. All right, does anybody have anything further to add that hasn't already been said?
So did you say there's no further money spent on this?
It's been delayed,
Just
so.
so that they said the budget allocation for it was what we paid.
Yeah, I queried that as well, because I saw the
because
35,000.
I was like, they were paid to do something. I was like, because of what happened and COVID.
Councillor, when just for future reference, you've got to put that through me.
Okay, sorry.
Just on a process. No,
Yeah.
that's fine.
It's just-
Anything else, Councillor Nguyen?
No.
Thanks very much for that. Anybody got anything to add? If not, I will circle back to Councillor Nelson to sum up.
Nothing more to sum up, thank you.
Fantastic. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Item 10.7, legislative policy review 2023, outlined on pages 66 and 83 with a recommendation on page 66. Do I have a mover? I'll say it again. Do I
So moved.
do I have
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Greg, would you like to
I
speak to the
think
motion?
enough's been said.
Okay. That being said, do we have a seconder? Councillor Backer would like to speak to the motion.
Second, and I'll briefly spoke to it, because I actually went through some of our policies online to see what they say and what they don't say, and there's really obscure ones, like, legislative ones that we have to do, like place naming, like when you name a place. And also like, when maybe non-compulsory ones, like when elected members serve 10 years, it's really weird policies. But one of the things is sometimes there's a kind of a crossover. For example, I know when we talked years ago about naming roads, which is a thing, we actually very much voted against naming them after councillors and mayors, in favour of Ghana naming and flora and fauna and other things. So, but that doesn't sort of sit in the elected member policy. So maybe just a question through the chair is that when policy reviews are done, do they sort of look at some of the other policies they touch? That's a silly question. I don't know.
Theo, I'd like to. This one, you want to take it on?
There'll be another body of work that will come back to council that will look at all the other discretionary policies. That there will be some intersection between what we discretionary do and what we must do. To make sure that we are undertaking what we need to into this legislation.
I think just to add to that, Councillor Backer, your question was, if we're looking at a policy that talks to another policy, do we look at them both?
Yeah.
The answer to that is yes.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification. Would anyone like to talk further to this motion? That being the case.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. I'm just
Stretching.
Stretching. I'm looking forward to this. Councillor Group, would you like to sum up?
No,
That having been said, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Item 10.8, periodic review of key financial indicators and 2023-2024 annual business plan and budget parameters outlined on pages 84 to 93 with a recommendation on page 85. Would anyone like to move the motion? All right, I'll give that.
please let me.
Greg. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, look, I will, because this is an exciting part of the year, and I think for new elected members, you're about to be thrust into this budget process, which is a really interesting ability for us to try and shape the activity of the CEO and his staff over the next 12 months and longer. A key part of that is obviously the KFIs in terms of what they look like and whether we're sort of meeting them or not. So I know in my first couple of budgets, it took a while to kind of understand how it all fitted together. But I think it is quite an exciting sort of opportunity over the next couple of months. And this is the sort of foundation piece, I think, that the author of the report wrote, that that this is really the start of that process. So we'll be having workshops no doubt in the coming weeks and months around budgeting, and I presume on our workshop in a couple of weekends as well. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity to have that discussion and try and understand it better, but I certainly commend the motion as part of this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Group. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nelson would like to speak to the motion.
Briefly, as I say, I attended the audit committee, which was actually really interesting meeting, and one of the only things obviously these will all go to our budget meeting, but a couple of things I did note, which I find very interesting, is that we are predicting not to meet the operating surplus ratio for this year. And we're also not going to meet our asset renewal for the next 2 years. So obviously these are just some KFIs, and it'll be interesting to see how this goes come budget time.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Anybody else? Councillor Ray.
Yeah, look, I'll draw people's attention to page 90. My apologies in advance to the governance manager, because I wanted to get this up in the next part, but that's fine. So if you look at the projected increased total revenue, we're looking at 6.25%. We're not allowed to say inclusive of growth anymore, just for business as usual. So like, this is without changing anything, without doing anything new. It's really important to have this long-term financial planning in place, because the other thing we were asking during discussions is, with our I suppose indicators, what's our capacity for borrowing within this term, should some elected members want to do, you know, parking facilities, for example, or do other solutions that we know our community has asked for. So you know, the audit committee have gone and say, well, look, if we're doing business as usual and we do need to borrow, it is possible with those kind of figures. But if we're looking for lower figures, we've got to be a bit more realistic about what we can do. So it's a really important exercise, and I agree with other members' comments that it's a really interesting time for new elected members, because it's what, you know, we need to do, what we want to do, what, you know, we like to do. So yeah, so I think I'm really grateful that the new elected members came on that along the audit committee meeting, because it was some really good training, I think, just to see how it all worked. And good luck to us all at budget time. It's going to be a tough one. So support the motion.
Okay, any further debate? If that's the case, I would like to ask Councillor Group to sum up.
Yeah, just one comment I'll make just on the back of Councillor Backer is there's a real discipline for us to plan against the long-term financial plan. And it's what's really easy is to say, well, let's just move the indicators and then we're going to be all right. And I think that's a bit of a trap that perhaps this council might have fallen into in previous years from time to time. But there's a real discipline to say, actually, we're committed to these financial indicators. This is what they look like, and how do we make sure we live within our means that we can within those indicators. And therein lies the challenge, I think, of the budget process. I was reflecting just recently with someone the other day that my first term of council, we used to get Councillor Barnett will remember this, maybe some others, but we used to get a CD of our, 60 budget bits that we'd all put up as elected members, and we'll go through them and fund them or not fund them. And it's a very different context today. So it is a challenge for us. We don't have those luxuries, but this has got to be the guiding framework for us to use to make sure we live within our means.
Thank you, councillor Drew. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Okay, item 11 on the agenda, urgent items. Anyone got an urgent item that they'd like me to consider? No.
Just a question through the chair. Is it possible that we could bring a motion forward for the benefit of the people in the gallery? That's appropriate. For item 14.1.
Well, we're kind of nearly there, I think.
Well,
Could
could be, you don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy to allow that. That's fine. Thanks for the suggestion.
Just
Yeah.
go over in the gallery and, kids at home.
Thought they were here for the long haul for the entire meeting, but may not send for those. Okay, so we'll move past the item number 12, reports for information temporarily, and go to item 14.1, notice of motion submitted by councillor Barnett, Ovingham Rail Overpass Removal Project, surplus land on Churchill Road.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just procedure again. We need to suspend meeting procedures at 2/3 votes. So if someone's prepared to move in second or suspension of meeting procedures and that's supported, then we can bring this item forward.
So we're suspending meeting procedures, but we're discussing and moving a motion.
Members need to approve a suspension of meeting procedures to bring this item forward, as we did earlier with the petition, same
Okay.
process.
Fair enough. Okay, so looking to get a vote on suspending meeting procedures for 9 minutes. Should we need? All those in favour?
Yeah, we haven't called it yet. Everyone's just a bit excited.
They were. Okay, that's enough vote. So we're suspending meeting procedures until 9:51.
We don't need a time for this.
No,
because you just get on
we're not just,
Councillor Brooke,
yeah.
and Lucy Simpson.
Oh, give me the shake.
All right, so item 14.1, notice of motion, Irving Rail Overpass Removal Project. Submitted by councillor Barnett. Do I have a mover?
You certainly do.
Oh, councillor Barnett, we'd like to speak to your very well and
Um,
detailedly described motion.
Yes, I trust that everybody's read the motion, and the information in the rationale, and I thank the staff that have helped with this. And it's quite timely, I think, with the deputation that we had from James, and the momentum that has been gathered through a lot of excitement with the Ovingham Rail Overpass removal project, and particularly in a lot of residents have identified about this green space being the surplus land on Churchill Road as described in the motion and in the information. I think that it's there's been meetings with yourself and with James the resident and our local member. He seems very enthusiastic, so I hope that can carry through. I just think I think we hopefully all agree that, having open space, particularly in that area that's been identified in part of the report from the staff, that there's a defined gap in the open space provision in the southern part of our city. It's an important piece of land because it goes back, there's been a history there. I was talking to some residents when we gathered at the community meeting facilitated by James and the Ovingham group, that I actually remember, most probably about 30 odd years ago, there was an old housing trust block near that sort of part of land there that's identified. And it was a community garden. I don't know, it had the blessing of the housing trust at the time, and some local residents worked on it, and there were loaded up sunflowers there. So anyway, they found a need for that, and so that went. Then we had the identification of the land that was called the urban forest, and was part of a built imagination project back in about the mid 1980s. And then we had the Churchill Road strategic planning, and identified that. So I think there's always been a quest to have any land that we can get in that area to do these things that have been identified. And it's now identified as surplus land. So I think we should go as hard as we can for it. I had just have you idly think about some of the things, and I'm thinking, we had like 20 years that we asked previously with the Department of Infrastructure, and that I reckon we should go as hard as we can in negotiations and go say 30 years, because I don't think they're going to be doing too much of another overpass or whatever down there in the next 30 years. It fits in nicely with how the state government seems to have its 30-year plan to do things. So I'm hoping that, in our negotiations, we might be grabbing 30 years to be able to get something done. Actually, it was a bit of a joke, in my opinion, calling it an urban forest when we had a few of these, little squiggly palm things there. It wasn't too much of the forest. So I'm thinking that there's a big expectation by residents, particularly down in that area, that we can really get some, greening going, some of the projects, and we might be able to see about some grants that might be available as well. Anyway, that's all down the track. First of all, we have to do what my motion suggests, and that is advocate to the state government to retain the surplus land for ongoing community benefit. So I put my motion to you and hope it will be strongly supported.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do I have a seconder or a question?
Yes, both. I'm doing this one.
I saw.
Well, second, and then.
Ask a question
And
first.
then by the.
Ask a
no.
ask a question first.
It's just that with Prospect, all the development down Churchill Road, we've got a lot more people living in high density sort of housing. No backyards. We have a good argument there to put forward to the government to, whether it's sort of a granting or just assistance in making better use of that land. And I don't know how it works, but being able to negotiate a bit more from the government regarding, was that all council?
Sorry, was there a question there?
Yes, it is a question. How do we go about, negotiating with the state government, using the argument that we've got more high density housing, we've got more development down Churchill Road. So there are more people in accommodation with no backyards. So we do need to expand on our green areas for whatever reason, recreation, gardens, any kind of multi-type use of green space. Is there a sort of an ability to sort of negotiate with the government to actually, better our argument and perhaps get some kind of financial assistance going forward with that kind of?
I'll have a go. Since there's certainly the ability and the desire to negotiate with the state government. we can put forward a strong business case. Ultimately, from the few conversations we've had so far, the local elected member, Alicia Hood, is going to progress our case, but it doesn't sit with her to make that decision. It sits with the chief executive and the team of the relevant department. What we can do is show how strongly the community is behind it, and us as an elected member group get behind it, build some momentum, help them, imagine what it might be used for. Ultimately, it's their decision. There's a financial implication on them granting us use of the land. There's also a financial implication of us being granted the use of the land, which the councillor Debacker's point, every decision comes at a cost, and some costs are, the kind of thing that we have to just consider. But yeah, that's my response, is that we put forward a cogent business case and a community case behind it, and we do our best, and then we leave it in the hands of the government. So,
Because, when you look at some areas overseas where there's that high density living, you often get a lot more outdoor living space because you are in apartments, and Churchill Road is going that way.
certainly. Yeah. So thanks for the question. Now I just want to test the waters on who's going to second the motion, whether it's the other ward councillor or Councillor Nguyen would like to second the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Fantastic. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, so, yeah, we attended the, I think, group meeting, so being in the West Ward, I'm going to Councillor Burnett for this motion through, so I'm happy to support it. And, would love to see this space activated, hopefully, if we get the approval, and show full support to the privilege, and hopefully that we can, take part and support them.
Thanks. Does anyone have anything else further to add? Councillor Backer.
Look, briefly, I've also attended it, and thank you, James, for your presentation. I think it's really well articulated, because we're going to have to look after that precinct anyway. So from a point of passive surveillance, there's already graffiti there, there's already people sleeping rough there. This issue is going to be had if we don't have it activated. And the great thing about having an activated space is, one, you've got community engagement, but two, you've also got the community enabled to do the things that we don't have to do. So, beautifying spaces, activating spaces, it's such a horrible buzzword, but you know what I mean, there's markets and that kind of thing. So I think it's going to cost us probably more if we see it desolate and crime filled. So I think it's really positive to get community in there. And I think we desperately need the state to assist us financially, because looking at the figures we had below, we've got to be really carefully about funding models.
Yep.
But I'm really excited about it. So yeah, happy to support it.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Well, actually, you can speak to the motion. You don't have to have a question now that it's been moved and seconded. So
It's just that land also, how much of it is shared with the Charles Sturt Council?
everything on our side of everything on the eastern side of the railway line is us, and everything that's on the western side of the railway
There
line.
was that plan that James made out where the markets are. It just appeared to me like that was shared council space, but that was still on our side, was it?
So that was the prospect side.
I don't think you can actually address the
Sorry.
gallery.
I just thought part of it was, I could see was clearly ours, but then the other part, that's ours. We're not,
There's just this bit.
just that, we're not deviating to the other bit as well. Okay, it's just I thought someone kind of.
There was a slight realignment in the council borders during the process, but that's probably as
We're
detailed
not
as
kind
we
of
need to look
jet
at
the
that.
whole area, just that space. Okay, so
That's right.
Thanks, councillor Holler. Anybody else have anything, councillor Standard?
As someone who lives basically as far away from that little pocket of land as possible, I just was delighted by the presentation. I had no idea that it was really there and existed and was available, and the opportunities for little markets underneath and things like that were fantastic. I found it enlightening. It was great. And it's nice that we can claw back a little bit of open space. We lose so much of it. And as a small council, anytime that we can claw back a little bit of public open space is gold dust. And I wholeheartedly support the whole project.
from the chair, councillor Stanton, I'm sure one of the West Ward councillors would be happy to take you on a guided tour of not only that part, but the rest of the West Ward. If you're not quite sure. No, that's all in the past now. From the chair, I think there was a couple of really good points made during the community meeting regarding this, and one of them was that this is one of the entry points into the city of Prospect, and it'd be fantastic to do as much as we can to make that a good experience. Anything else to add that hasn't already been said? That being the case, councillor Barnett, would you like to sum up?
No, I think, hopefully the report speaks for itself and the enthusiasm from the residents down there. There's also a very enthusiastic band of residents on the other side who came to our meeting, and so they're very keen to also claw back one of the 2 lots of depots over there, hopefully. So we've got, on Charles Stewart's side and our side, a lot of very enthusiastic residents, and they're very keen to get going, and you might even see some guerrilla, like as in GUERILLA, work being done there. I think some of us already started pulling some of the plants, didn't we, James, when we were down there? Yeah, so I think if we can keep it at that real community level, it doesn't have to be all highly organised and whatever, that tends to happen when you get quite often councils and that involved. I think so. I'm hopefully very enthusiastic about this, and hopefully it will come to fruition.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Let's put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, so if you come for this item, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the agenda. However, we understand if you would like to take leave. Thank you. Alrighty, let's go back in time again. So we've done item 11. So item 12 on the agenda, reports for information. These information reports can be resolved en bloc, and only those items reserved by members will be debated. So following items, would anyone like to pull out item 12.1? Councillor Backer, do I ask now for the reason for pulling it out, or later?
Now later.
Just ask now.
Yeah, it's regarding the draft asset management plan that's going out for consultation.
Thanks. Would anyone like to pull out item 12.2, mayoral monthly report? Would anyone like to pull out item 12.3, minutes of the audit and risk committee held on the 12th of December 2022? Okay, so let me see if I'm going to get this right. So
12.2 and 12.3 in block.
12.2 and 12.3 in block. No debate. So all those in favour?
We need a mover and second.
Sorry, moving second.
Move.
Move that. Strong position. Councillor Barnett, councillor Standen. No debate. So all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, item 12.1, councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, just say thank you for the report. I caught the tail end of a meeting, and it was really informative. I've had the privilege of chatting further with a couple of the members in different capacities. And I think just the hearing loop now, the comment made, oh, it's $50,000 on the current hearing loop. I think it's a travesty. It's discriminatory. This place is for the public. We should be able to hear, and hopefully that just gets done. We should be able to just do these things. One of the other, I guess, not issues with this, I think it's great that we're progressing this, and I think it's great that we've got elected members embedded into it, is that it makes us cognizant of what we should be thinking of at every step of the way, not just at the delivery stage, but at the concept stage, and really thinking about how we're including and how we're getting everyone involved in the decision making, and people, with lived experience being part of those discussions as well. Coming back to that, like I looked at some of the, I guess the things that we're doing. Someone from the the Access and Inclusion group had contacted me to say that they hadn't been consulted regarding the draft asset management plan. So maybe just through the chair to the CEO, the director, are these reference groups that we have been contacted when we do have things out for consultation, like to use their networks and such?
So through you, Mel, I would generally yes, but the asset management plans are a funny one. It's not the sort of thing we would ordinarily flip to DAEP, not certainly under their current terms of reference. Ms. Taylor, Mr. Eskandari, anything to add?
Through chair, whenever anything is open for community consultation, we always send a link to that process to the date. We actually, when we develop the date agenda, we tend to work an agenda in consultation with the community group about what they want to listen through as well. So the last couple of times they have focused a bit more on the open plan spaces, and we had the presentation. So that's I guess the kind of approach that we've been taking. So no, they haven't had the asset management plans sit directly in front of them. However, they have received a link.
Yeah. So I guess it's just like being like anyone else being on this, on a mailing list. It's not specifically asked. So there were a couple of questions, and I think it's just to consider. So the draft asset management plan is going to be our biggest cost. So it's, roads, paths and things like that. So this might come back, but one of the questions that was asked is we're assessing safe footpaths. So I guess some of the questions around like we're going to be assessing everything for the draft asset management plan. Are we including statements in relation to people living with disabilities, wheelchairs, and other mobility devices when we're going out to the draft asset management plan, when we're assessing conditions? Because it would seem silly to do it twice. I guess what I'm saying is like someone could eyeball something and say, oh, look, there's a B grade, whatever. But if it's got an accessibility issue, like it's over 10 degrees or whatever as a road or a footpath, obviously that is accessible, or one side doesn't have a footpath, that isn't accessibility. So I guess condition is separate from accessible assessment. And I'm just wondering if that's going to go out in the tender process. I'm just trying to catch it.
So yeah, can I direct that?
Yeah, through you, Melo, this is a vexed situation because what you're trying to do is talk about service levels effectively.
Yeah.
In a document that really applies one, and I'm talking, I need to put this in context, in particular for the new members. The current asset management plans are on consultation. Again, comments have been made about them. That is not the endpoint of our asset management framework, members. We have a lot of work to do that will capture things like ideal service levels that equate cost of service delivery with the expected outcome for the community. And that may see in future years, service levels go up or down depending upon the views of this chamber informed by community consultation, your constituency. That is not something that we've done particularly robustly in this process because of the need to essentially put in place a compliant asset management plan to avoid a qualified audit and to inform future long-term financial planning. That has been the priority for these plans. In other words, to save us from under budgeting and save us from essentially failing audit requirements in relation to not having asset management plans at all. That means that our current asset management plans, the ones that are on consultation, are fit for purpose, but they don't apply detailed service levels like you may see in some others. And what I mean by that is essentially they apply a service level of lowest whole of life cost of asset maintenance and renewal. They do not say we will maintain them to a certain standard, even if they're not. For example, if we have certain streets in Prospect, and we do, that are probably right now, given their grade and form, not capable of meeting any requirement. I talk about a place like Livingston, for example. A renewal project in Livingston, save for the fact that we are actually going to spend a lot of money bringing it up to standard in the next year or two. But if we were just renewing a project like that under the asset renewal plan, we would be replacing like for like, and we would be minimising whole of life cost. We would make it as compliant as we could with Australian standards, and that does mean sometimes that we need to do work beyond what we ordinarily would do. but it's again informed by the lowest whole of life cost. And those projects are not always going to be strictly compliant, given the nature of where they are and the forms in place. Is that an ideal outcome? Absolutely not. Do we want to fix it? Yes, and that requires essentially restarting the asset management framework, and members, you're all aware that you set that for me as a KFI over the next 9 months. So we're working on that, and that is a high priority. Is it captured in the current asset management plans in a detailed way that I love? No, and none of us should be happy with that. That's why we need to fix it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
So just further to that, look, I've looked at, it's really important to a lot of this in the room, and formerly council members as well. So something, for example, at a strategic level, identifying key pedestrian and bike, east, west and north, south connectors. We could kind of prioritize some areas that do get that treatment. And maybe when we're considering our draft asset management plan, that's considered in the, 10 and 20 year. That's probably something that could come back at, I don't know, strategic management workshop or.
Possibly. It's worth pointing out that new assets do need to meet the requirements. So if we're building a new asset, like for example, a pedestrian refuge or a crossing, that needs to meet the requirements. So
Just on that, and again, talking with some members of the group, there's minimum compliance and best practice. And there's quite a difference between the two. So I guess where I'm interested in is if we can identify some areas that do get heavily trafficked and are pedestrianised, or people are using scooters or have people with disabilities, that they're maybe prioritised, and look at that fine grained service level. So to say, look, if this is a major pedestrian, just say between here and the football oval, which has just had a heap of money spent on it, could be the town hall, go out to the football oval. But you might be in a mobility scooter. What's it like, that experience going up the footpath there and up the footpath there? So identifying those key locations. So I'm just highlighting it. I didn't see it captured in this just yet, but it might be something.
they do often bring us that feedback in terms of particular nodes and specific areas which need attention. And of course, if those areas are up for renewal and there's the possibility of spending a little extra to make them compliant, we can do that as a new project.
Again, compliant best practice.
Well, or even to reach a higher standard.
Yes.
Of course, it always,
It
We-
doesn't always.
the staff have heard.
Planning,
the staff have heard, and I'm sure, again, DAEP is relatively new for us,
Yeah.
and we are learning how to apply the skills and experience of that committee and steering group in our project delivery. I feel we are getting better, and I think I'll take that as feedback and we'll apply
Yeah.
it.
Thank you very much.
So I should have at the very start asked whether you were moving that motion.
I can move.
I'm assuming
I won't say.
you kind of have.
promise.
Fantastic. I've got your name written here already. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nelson, I'd like to switch the motion. It's fine. Is there anything further to add that hasn't already been covered? In which case, Councillor Baker, would you like to sum up?
No, thank you.
Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, carried unanimously. Okay, so moving on to council member reports and briefings. Are there any council member reports and or briefings? Nope. Okay, so item 14.1 hasn't been covered. 14.2, notice of motion, community leadership dialogue submitted by me. I know it's not necessarily common practice for the mayor to put motions on the table, but what the hey.
I've got the clock.
Ready, set, back. So I'm going to start by asking if anyone would like to move this motion, otherwise I'm happy to.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Would you like to speak to the motion?
I would. I would, actually. I think this is a great idea. From day dot, I think it's great that we get a lot more of the community group leaders involved. It's something that I don't know if it's happened in the past, but certainly from evidence, I don't believe it has. Or if it hasn't, it probably hasn't been tried. A couple of concerns would be that, these local group leaders or community group leaders, clearly we have from religious groups to primary school groups to community groups to sporting groups. So clearly, I think it's got to be taken down the track of being careful of how they're shared and watching for any the conflicts and conflicts of interest. But I think this is an excellent idea that I think we should all get behind.
Thanks, councillor Nelson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stanley.
I agree with everything. Said.
Okay, is there anything else that hasn't already been said that people would like to say? Councillor Gregg.
I just want to make very supportive of it. We'll be supporting the motion. I think that perhaps picking up a bit of a theme from Councillor Nelson is that again, it's about setting expectations really clearly about what we're doing. Because I think if I was a leader of a community group, kind of am, but not here, and I came into this, I would have some expectations about what this meant going forward. And so I just think that need to be articulated fairly well. That would be my kind of great motion, great idea, and I look forward to it.
Any further discussion? So from the chair, thanks for the support thus far. It is a bit of a process where we'll need to set the expectations and then do a retrospective of how it went and potentially refine our response. I think it's almost certain that not all of these leadership groups will be ongoing. I'd like to think that they would, but some groups will take to it more effectively than others, but everyone should be given the opportunity to do so. And the idea behind it is to empower the groups to get on and do a great job, but to aggregate what council can do to show our support and empower them to continue to do great work and expand what they're doing in the community. So that's the intention behind it. Yeah, I agree, definitely important to set expectations, but also allow the groups to put forward what they would like to get out of it as well. So we can bring that together, test the waters, and then refine the process. So that was the intent behind it. And I'm sure with the support around the table and with the internal team, it's got every chance of being something that works really well. So Councillor De Backer.
Just on setting expectations, one of the things is a lot of small groups have been waiting to come back with the leasing and licensing policy. So I think it would be kind of like talking about timing. It would make sense if that was resolved, or at least nearly resolved, because they're saying, well, we'd love to do something, but we can't get more than a 12-month lease. So I think, the big picture is we've been trying to get that through for 8 years. Yeah, exactly. And I think, like our clubs that are coming to us asking for money, they might actually just need more members or share their facilities as a way of reducing extra funds instead of putting to council. So maybe just a system through the chair is, when is that actually coming back? The leasing and licensing policy.
So yeah.
So through email, it is meant to go on consultation pretty much any time now. It's my understanding. Ms. Taylor, do you have an idea of when?
Sorry, through the mayor, I would need to take it on notice and get back to you, but I can certainly get back to you.
Mr. By May, I'm told. I'm aware from Mr. Lane is on leave, unless Mr. Eskandari, you have an update. The two key staff involved in this issue are on leave at the minute.
Yeah.
However, my last information was that the consultation meant to begin very, very soon. And when the key staff members back, the intention is to bring it back to you by May.
So just again, speaking to that, it'd be interesting to see what the kind of consultation is with those community groups. And if this is going to be different and better, should it be reversed the other way around? So we're kind of building those relationships as we get the consultation out. I just don't know chicken or egg, but that's up to you guys to decide.
Communication can't hurt in any form, can it? Timing, as long as the conversation is started and is productive, I think we'll manage either way.
Okay, unless there's anything else to add, I'd like to put that to the vote. So all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 14.3, 14.3, notice of motion, business support services submitted by me again. Would anyone like to move this motion? Councillor Barnett, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I'm just mindful of a recent council elections and the component, of about business and perhaps some dissatisfaction and things like that. So I think this is an excellent way to bring all those people involved together and looking at, you know, our sort of whole city. And it's very easy with a lot of these things, similar with the previous motion. Of course, they're all there, you know, to push their own group and desires and whatever. But I think it's very important that you know, instead of council being seen as quite often, you know, especially in some social media, you know, as the bad guy, the one that's stopping things happening and doing all this and that. I think if we can somehow get all this together and get them working together on what are identified as the issues and or even what are the good things, you know, that we can work on, not just dwelling on the negatives. So I think it's an excellent idea.
Thank you, councillor Barnett. Do I have a second to councillor?
I'm probably, oh, it depends what the answer is to the next question. My understanding is we've got a Main Street conference being hosted here. In what month?
So yeah,
Through Mayor Larwood, I might flick this one to Director Pearce if I can.
Yeah, sure. To my knowledge, the Main Street SA conference that's being planned at the moment is planned for mid-May. To my knowledge.
So often they have bus trips as part of their, would it be worth maybe flipping it so we're just engaging more of our community to engage in the Main Street conference?
Stop me if I'm taking the wrong approach here, but I'll have a crack at answering that in context of the intention. So the intention behind part 3 in particular was to get us as a group out of where we live and spend our time and go and see what's going on, to avoid any comfortability with where we might perceive ourselves in the grand scheme of things, and to see what else is going on near us that we should be interested in, concerned about, copy, whatever it might be. So that was the intention behind part 3 of this motion, more so than something going the other way. So
Yeah, it's just because often Main Street do bus tours as part of their, so I just think be mindful, because it would be silly of us to do something that Main Street's already doing. And we're actually hosting it here in Prospect. So I'm just maybe alerting everyone's attention, very supportive of it, but maybe just, I don't know if you've seen that agenda, just see,
No.
yeah, maybe we could be also, as well as doing this, inviting our local business community to the Main Street conference. That'd be great, but I will support the motion, but we've got the Main Street conference, so it'd be great.
yeah, that's good suggestion. Was that a question, councillor Rebecca, or were you seconding?
I'll support it, I'll second that, yes.
Okay, anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Stan and then councillor Nelson.
I think you probably answered it, but I represent a group of businesses that are quite often forgotten along Northeast Road, Hampstead Hotel, First Choice. I'm guessing they're probably more corporate than anything. The Drakes and all those little businesses there, and then you've got all the little businesses up Hampstead Road, a little caravan place, and all that there. As long as they're included, and it sounds like you want to include everyone citywide, as long as it's inclusive of all the business, not just Main Street, I'll be happy to support it. It sounds like you're going to need a bigger bus though.
Is that a question?
No, it's a
Yeah.
comment. It sounds like you answered it before.
Councillor, thanks, councillor Stan, for the question.
Thank you, Mayor Larwood. I think similar to my statement in the previous motion, fantastic idea. I love this idea. I love the idea of getting businesses together. Perhaps a caution in my personal view, if we think about the CEO's former line of work, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. I think most of us through the recent election campaigning. There is quite a divide in the business community. Some businesses absolutely love the council and some absolutely despise council. So I think we need to tread carefully in the invitations, in how it's formed, in who's in how it's done, because you could create a lot of dissent by doing this.
Yeah, good point. Anybody else like to speak to the motion? So briefly from the chair, thanks for the support and the points made. The intent behind this was that I've got a level of uncomfortability with how things are vis-a-vis relationship with some aspects of the community, and also how in particular, the Main Street Traders Association is currently being run. I'm a little bit concerned with how that's happening. I want to repair relationships to the extent that they need to. I'm not saying that heaps of them do, but there definitely are relationships that need to be improved and repaired. And the only way we're going to move forward and help the city of Prospect maintain its position as it currently stands, which is very successful, which has cost a lot of money, taken a lot of time, but if not treated respectfully and progressed and dealt with well, we'll lose our position, and that's a generation to get it back. So the whole intent behind this is to bring together relevant stakeholders, not only internal, but also bring in external people who aren't just living and breathing in the city of Prospect, who are seeing lots more than what we're seeing, and start a discussion, start debate, start a consultative, that's the right word, I think, process which aims to bring all the people together and really blend into helping us create a strategy and be successful and be harmonious in the way we approach it. So that's the idea behind this motion, and it'll take a bit of work to frame it properly, but you know, the team is no doubt more than capable of bringing things together. Councillor Nguyen.
So yeah, I support this, and as a business owner in the area, I do think it's important to engage business and yeah, to build that relationship. So businesses owners also know like point contacts and can also make suggestions and raise their concerns. I'm aware that I think John mentioned about the network, Prospect network that we have. I mean, we could probably use that because we already have business employment on that platform. So that might be a good way, you know, to reach out to businesses and use that platform that we already have. But yeah, I think it is really important to engage the businesses in the area.
Thanks, Councillor Nguyen. I think that's almost everybody, unless there's anything else to add. Councillor Barnett, would you like to say something?
I think there's been some quite good discussion and points, and particularly comments you made, Mayor. So I just encourage people to support them.
Thank you. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 14.4, notice of motion, Ward Councillor Calendar DL flyer, submitted by Councillor Nguyen. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nguyen. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this in a couple of these meetings. I still have residents coming into the shop asking who the mayor is and who their elected members are. And a lot of residents not knowing what ward they actually fall into and contacting other members. And I'm always happy to speak to all residents, but yeah, I do like get in the right direction of who their elected member is. And but I just, yeah, the comments I've heard is you know, they thought they would actually get a notification, and I said we have published it on the website and on our social media platforms, and they're like, we don't follow any of those platforms, so we don't check the website. So yeah, I think it'd be nice for residents to just know who their elected members are over there, and maybe we can use that as well to put any list of services that we provide. So, you know, we don't have to do the magnet one because I've already heard a few residents not being happy with the magnet one. So you can just provide the calendar. I've got a quote already. It was about $800 to get 10,000 flyers. And I suggested that we just all get allocated half of our ward amount and we can distribute that on our own. And be a good chance for us to also engage in the community as well. Again, and introduce ourselves.
Thank you, councillor Lewin. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Barnett.
Yes, Councillor Anna, we've been discussing some of the, and I know some other elected members, you know, about how we inform our community. There with the demise of the messenger, I mean, that used to be where, you know, everybody get be it chucked over their fence and then in the plastic envelope. But at any rate, that's where most people got their information, you know, almost straight after the elections. This happened, so we don't do that. A lot of people don't use, quite a few people still don't use social media, or they're just, you know, were on it and don't want to be on it anymore for various reasons. We only have our magazine come out, 4 times a year. And I know that our staff have been putting out a lot of like Twitter and other social media and stuff like that. But I think particularly as, you know, post election, it was published, all of the election results in the Advertiser, and hopefully what our $140,000 most probably that we had to pay possibly helped to pay some of that. Yeah, so I think it's like, well, at least at this stage, it's sort of the once possibly in 4 years because of the election and that. And yeah, so yeah, I as I say, there've been some discussion of doing some research now for some residents about how there is no way that the magnets that are on, you know, a lot of the promotion material that comes to us and all that, you can't recycle that magnet that's on there. So it just goes into the red bin and takes about, you know, 600 years to be, or if it ever gets disposed of in our thing. So I think if we can sort of demonstrate to do this in a environmentally friendly manner, that would be good. So I support it. There's still a little bit to be worked out, but that can happen.
Question.
Regarding, you know, getting them the word out to people, you know, who their councillors are. We are having the little write-ups in the magazine coming out in March. How often has that been a regular thing? I mean, everyone gets the magazine, everyone in the household gets the magazine. There is an actual little write-up, our vision for 2023 coming out in March. Our photos there and our awards. So we do get, we'll have that information going out to everybody. This would be an extra. I'm just wondering, do we frequently have elected members going into the magazine just to, sorry, I shouldn't be asking, sorry. You know, how often have we in the past had elected members feature in the magazines? Because if it was a little bit regular, at least once a year, it would be a reminder to residents just who their councillor is, the board councillor.
Back in the day, each edition of the magazine had a small piece by each elected member, and then more recently there's been a couple of elected members and possibly the mayor featured in each edition from memory. And the next edition of the magazine is coming out in March 2023. So yeah, just looking for a nod.
Ms. Taylor?
Through me, yes, like March 2023, and you're correct, there is a small feature on each and every elected member, giving your vision for what you would like to bring to the year, and the magazine comes out 3 times.
Because that is one way that gets to everybody. Most people get it, they're getting a glossy magazine, will actually flick through it. So,
We hope.
you know, see if we hadn't had that feature in the magazine as a regular thing in the past. Perhaps we should look at making that something a bit more regular and you know, residents soon enough will become familiar with who you are, perhaps that little spiel with what you stand for.
Thanks, councillor Hart. Councillor Nelson.
I think it's a great idea. I did speak to Councillor Nguyen back in December. I actually had mine designed, and it's going to be a bit of a thank you for your trust and everything else, and had them all put it up. Then, of course, I started to see the feedback about the amount of calendars people receiving. I received 4, thanks to Mr. Malinowskis, Ms. Hood, Ms. Michaels, and Mr. Georgianis. So choosing which one to put in the fridge was always tough. So I put mine off print and thought maybe I'd do it for next year or whatever it is. So my fit is a great idea, but I just think timing is now lost. I think there is maybe something else that we can do. Yes, we have the magazine coming out, which I think would be advantageous. Again, I think this is a fantastic idea, but perhaps the timing's been lost on me.
Thanks, councillor Nelson, councillor Groot, and then councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Mayor. And look, similarly, it's a great idea to do this, and we have lost a little bit in not having the magazine as regular and having the 300 words that we used to have, and then 250 words, and then 200 words, and then 75 words, and that's kept going down. But I think that magazine profile for me really boosted my profile when I first started council. That's what people read. That's what I told people what I was thinking, what I want to do, and I found that quite useful. I'm just concerned about 2 things. The cost is immaterial, so the cost isn't an issue. I think it will. We should all just put $200 in each and do it. But I think that I think it will probably go the way of every piece of junk mail that I get. I mean, not say we're junk mail, but every piece of unsolicited mail that I get in my letterbox, which it goes on the bench and we look at it and then it goes in the recycling bin. And I suspect that's what will happen. I don't have a picture of me in my fridge. I don't expect anyone else to want my picture on their fridge either. But I just wonder whether we could use a magazine in a different way. And I know that we kind of sell off the back page to Fenwicks and they pay us for that. But even on the inside back page of magazine, it sounds a bit naff, but you know, even like a tear out section that had that information in there or so. There's other ways we could do it, which may be easier in a sense. Or we actually have a supply in businesses and libraries and other parts around the building and around the city. And I'm still of the view, to go off on a tangent for a minute, our magazine should be distributed that way as well, because even when we had the messenger and people remembered door knocking, there was 6 weeks of messengers squashed onto the driveway during winter because people never read them. And I think we need to let people self-service a bit. I'd be interested to know how many people don't know about the election result, because I've certainly had people, I have had some people say the same question, like, did you get in and who else got in? But the majority of people that contacted me are people that know. So it's an impossible one to actually quantify who knows and who doesn't know. But I'm just a bit worried that it's a use. I think it's a really good thing to do. I think the distribution method could be a little bit different in terms of letting people self-select that, and making sure that we're not just creating a little bit more waste for people putting that in. I don't know if there's an easy answer to it. I think we should encourage people to social media sites a bit more. I've been really impressed with the posts that we've been doing across every social media platform. I even discovered I had an Instagram account I didn't know I had because someone tagged me in it. I got a notification, but I think that's useful. It's not going to be for everyone, I get it. But I think it's something for a lot of people. Yeah, I'm kind of a bit stuck with it, to be honest, because I think the intent is right. I think maybe the execution could be done differently.
Thanks, Councillor. Just before we've hit 10:30, 10:33 actually, so we need to extend the meeting by 27 minutes. All those in favour? All those against? Carried unanimously. Exciting.
Actually, 11 o'clock.
Councillor Backen.
I'll finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I know Councillor Lynn talked to me about this for the first week, because I think my disappointment was they didn't hold the front page for the Christmas one. We were supposed to be in it, and that would have solved all the problems. So, look, we spend, $140,000 on elections, all the staff time and getting us in, and then there's a big gap. Yes, there's social media, but yes, there's a printout downstairs, but look, when we put that together, but what I'd like what I'm actually really interested in doing is that gallery out there was fantastic. It's great just to have such an engaged community, and we had one of the highest turnouts of metropolitan Adelaide. So actually people voting like 40%, which is almost unheard of. So I actually think I'd almost like to enable one of our community groups or a couple of community groups. And often the local MPs will let you print out like an A4, whatever. We submit a bit like we did before the election, you know, the questions from the community, maybe just one, and get their messages out, you know. So it may be like a community newspaper or something like that. I mean, that can go wrong as well, but you know, as long as I'm quoted correctly, I don't really mind. So yeah, I do think we've missed it, and I think, look, I'd happily kind of support, you know, both Westport councillors if you want to do your own thing or whatever, but I'm certainly happy to wait for the magazine coming out. But certainly I'd be interested in the interim conversation of enabling our business leaders, our community groups, because the thing is, if they put anything out, they have the entire audience because there's no competition. So if you want to get angry about Rosary Hall or whatever, let's get a community newspaper out. Let people know what's going on, because there's a huge vacuum. So I'd be interested in having that discussion, but based on this, I might not. But the intent's great.
I think that's everyone, except for last but not least, councillor Standard.
I think it's a good idea. I do think it's poorly timed. I think we calendars need to be out in November so that they're ready to go up in January. I also think it's actually more of a budget bid. If we're spending $800, I know for a fact that in budgets past, there's things that have dropped below the line that haven't been supported that were $400 for a men's shed or a nappy trial, and I think this is more of a budget bid type item. And I think now that if we agree that the timing is wrong, that we've already missed, we haven't even got them printed or designed yet, we've missed a month out of the calendar already. It could very well be if it does go ahead, it could be a financial year calendar. And that would be a little bit clever, because then the next 6 months afterwards, you actually have your calendar still on the fridge when everyone else is coming in. You go, and everyone else in January, you go, why do I need this calendar? I've already got this wonderful financial year one there that takes me through to the end of June. And it's a clever way of doing it. There's another little thing too that I curate, although it might not seem that way, I curate my communications quite diligently, and I certainly, like Councillor Drew, don't have my picture up on the fridge. None of my communication that I sent out to the election materials had my photo on the front. So when people did put it up there, they didn't see my big ugly mug up there. So look, I won't support it on this occasion, but I'm happy to see it go through as a budget bid, and I think that's probably where it'll get the scrutiny that it probably deserves. And if it gets through that, then it gets through that.
Thank you, councillor Standard.
So, Mayor, can I ask a brief question? I don't often do this.
As long as it's brief.
It is brief. Would it be possible, going to the intent of the motion, which is letting people know who's been elected, could we not do something like, and so I'm just trying to think a little bit laterally here, but have a core flute that we put in some parks the next 4 weeks with, hey, did you know these two people got elected as your local members? You could put them in prominent spots like parks, or
that would scare birds off as well.
Well, it could have the benefit of both. I'm just thinking in terms of cost, it's probably a fairly immaterial cost. But if the intent is letting people know, that's probably a way of doing it. But anyway, I maybe ask that as a question whether that's feasible or not. It may not be feasible.
I'm not sure about Corfley, but maybe a biodegradable
Well,
material.
I mean that, yes. Like the other one on May North Road, that's what you're
You're
getting.
an environmental vandal. Deputy Mayor Craig.
The ones that Office Works had, we put them away and bring about 6 months later. He's on the whole.
So
Standees.
So
I
it was a
have to
question.
think about how to deal with this, but because everyone has spoken and it's a question and it's a good question. But
You haven't spoken yet, man.
I haven't spoken yet. It's a difficult one because it's a good question. So I'm going to speak to it now. It's a good question, and I tend to agree, great sentiment, but the timing is not right because we're kind of replicating something else. But we do have community events coming up ahead of us. We've got Twilight concerts, we've got Fringe, a whole bunch of things, and so I'm not sure how we could tweak this in any way to achieve the outcome, but have the words completely different than what's on the screen.
You're looking
So,
to
yeah,
me, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure what the question is, other than to say you could put a corflute in the park if you like. If we're directed to print corflutes with council's names and phone numbers and whatever on them, we will do what we're told. And it really then becomes a matter for council, whether it's desirable. Just coming back to the question of your prospect and publishing that, members, we know as a staff body that that's been a sore point for a while, and we need to review the model, and there is an intent to bring a workshop back to council sometime before the end of this financial year to address the question of your prospect delivery model. That may be an opportunity to address at least part of this issue, given that it's been dealt with differently in the past. I don't know the full history of that, but we can discuss it. In terms of corflutes and parks, though, you'll forgive me, members, if I don't involve myself in that discussion. It really is a matter for you.
Okay. I'm going to take that as a question.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to amend anything, it was just a question.
Thanks very much. Okay, back to you, councillor, and the wind to sum up.
So yes, we had organised this earlier, back in December, or soon after the election, that would have been great. So I just understand everyone's comments that it being too late. I mean, any kind of advertising material, just to notify the residents. So if we could have some kind of, like the events that are coming up, if we can have something with our details, and I think you guys printed the ones downstairs, but maybe something that we can grab easily, that's a postcard size with all the details. So it just doesn't have to be a calendar event, we need a notice postcard with the elected members and the details. And then, yeah, placed into businesses with, like, you know, high foot traffic, or you can hand out as you wish, and at these events.
Thanks, councillor Nguyen. Let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Let's have a big hands up. Just two. Okay, all those against? Motion is not carried. Okay, moving on to item 15 on the agenda, questions with notice there are nil. Item 16 on the agenda, confidential items. There's a recommendation on page 25 to go into confidence. Can I have a mover?
Yes.
Shall we speak to?
No.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nelson, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. So if you shouldn't be here, then now's your opportunity to leave. Yep. Just get the doors, eh?